How are you?
I am fine. How are you?
Doing well. Vivian, good evening.
Good evening, and how is everybody?
So far, so good.
I did not enjoy the weather yesterday.
On the other hand, I did. We have quorum, so we can begin. And I'd like to begin by introducing myself. I'm Wayne Benjamin. I chair Land Use for Manhattan Community Board 12. I am joined by my fellow committee members, Tanya Bono, Vivian Ducat, and Jim Berlin. I would also like to welcome, although he is not with us yet, a brand new Land Use Committee member, and that will be Daniel Bonilla. And also present with us is board member Sally Fisher. So I want to, welcome my committee members and fellow board member. We have a number of presentations on the agenda for tonight, but I just want to begin picking up with a point from our meeting last month. And that is the committee agreed that it made sense, given the various discussions we've had over the past few months, and indeed over probably the past 18 months concerning planning and rezoning, to host a land use and zoning training session in July. The community boards do not meet in July, although on occasion there are committee meetings, but any meeting that happens during the summer, if there's an action taken, it has to be ratified at the regularly scheduled meeting in September. What we're talking about is not a committee meeting per se, and this was clarified by the borough president's office. It's a training session. So the good thing about that is, since it's not a committee meeting and business is not being conducted and quorum is not required, it can continue to be virtual, which means it makes it easier for a broad range of people to attend. And the Department of City Planning will walk us through the land use and planning presentation. It's hosted, the event is hosted by Community Board 12, and it will be held on the same day and time that let me stop for a second. Paola, could you please send the link? There's Daniel.
I've been trying to swing him over. The person has to accept it unless.
Okay, no, I see him now. Yes, so I was just mentioning we have a new committee member, so Daniel is with us. So once again, the training session will be the first Wednesday in July at 7 p.m. and the community board office will be circulating well in advance information on that. So to begin, we have—
Excuse me, Wayne. You
Yes.
also have Ms. Ferreira, Luana Ferreira. She's also one of the new board members. She's just joining in.
Okay.
Not assigned to land use, but she's here as a visitor today.
Okay. So Daniel, why don't you, since you're new to the committee and I introduced you, why don't you just say hello to us all?
Hi, sorry about that. Hi, my name is Daniel Bonilla. I am a part of the community board land use and also parks and recreation. I'm an artist. I live uptown. I don't know what else to say about myself.
Well, it was just, I welcomed you to the committee in your absence, so I just wanted you to have the opportunity to introduce yourself. And we also have another, not a committee member, but a new board member with us. So is it Luana? Would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Hi, everybody. My name is Luana Ferreira. I'm a recently appointed community board member, lifelong Washington Heights Inwood resident, public school, all of that, been there, first library card. So it was time for me, I thought, to become involved in my community. I'm also the Director of Student Affairs for the SUNY Bronx Educational Opportunity Center, and I have a doctorate in linguistics.
Welcome. So we have two presentations this evening by New York City Parks and the Historic House presentation. The first one pertains to the Morris Jamel Mansion and a capital project that is, proposed for that house. And the second pertains to the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum and the capital project that pertains to that. And although I think I've discussed this in the past, just for full disclosure, I'm actually on the Board of Trustees for the Morris Jamel Mansion and have been for a while. So I see John Project from the Historic House Trust. I guess I will turn the floor over to you, and you can walk us through the two presentations separately and just remind us, what actions you are seeking from the committee.
Great, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, okay, wonderful. Well, thank you to Community Board 12 for having us here tonight, to the Land Use Committee. We really appreciate the opportunity to present two projects to you. I'd like to quickly just introduce those on the call who are part of this presentation tonight in case we do need to call on them. And of course, we'll have the presentations by our consulting architects. And I think we'll actually start with the Dyckman Farmhouse. I don't know that I see Meredith Horsford on the call. I'm looking at the participants, but I'd like to start with introducing her and or her board members if they're joining us tonight at the Dyckman Farmhouse. They are our site partners and have been instrumental in moving forward with this very important project that we're presenting to you tonight. Along with the rest of the team, we have Amy Wooden, and that you could just give a wave as I mention your name if you don't mind, so people can quickly identify you. Amy is our project manager at the Historic House Trust. With regard to Dyckman, we also have Ann Weber, who is the project manager for the project, and Nancy Rankin, who is a partner with the firm of John G. Wade Associates, who are working on the Dyckman Farmhouse restoration and design project.
John, it's Meredith, I'm here, but it's not allowing me to be on the screen for some reason.
Hi, Meredith. Thanks for joining us.
Actually, you are on the screen now.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, I see the Dyckman Farmhouse logo and your raised hand.
Oh, let's see.
You don't appear as a participant oh, there you are. You're now on the, oops, you just disappeared. I'm not sure what's going on.
No, I still see her.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm here.
There you are, yes.
Great. And it's possible that Don Rice, also the board chair at the Dyckman Farmhouse Alliance, is also on today's call. I certainly hope he might be an attendee.
Yes, Don is here, and so is Adele.
Awesome. Thank you, Meredith. And then for our second project, which we'd like to present to you tonight, is for the Morris Jamel Mansion. We have Shiloh Hawley joining us, who is the executive director at the house. And we have Danielle Monopoly, who is the Historic House Trust project manager. We have Paige Ayers-Calley, who is with Paige Ayers-Calley Architects. They are the design consultant. And then the project manager for Paige Ayers-Calley Architects is Eric DeFranzo, who will be doing the presentation tonight. I'd like to just thank you again for welcoming us. You are actually our first public presentation for these two very important projects for the Historic House Trust and NYC Parks and our two site partners. These projects have been long in the making, and we're super excited to present them and to get your feedback tonight.
And John, if I could just ask, not right now, but after the meeting, if you could just send us just a list of the participants and which organization that makes it easier for the minutes.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that as well. And then Steve Simon may also be on tonight's call, and or Jennifer Hoppe.
Steve is actually a land use committee member. He has not yet joined us.
Okay, very good, very good. And so they are on the NYC Park side. Clearly, I think this committee knows them well. Hopefully you do. So again, thank you for having us. I think we'll start tonight with the Dyckman Farmhouse project. And then Wayne will hold off for Morris Jamel until our second presentation, if that's okay. Okay. The Dyckman Farmhouse restoration and ADA access and new construction is quite a complicated project. It has design funding of $6.976 million. So it's significantly funded, which is really fantastic because the house has not had capital work in significant capital work, I would say easily in 4 decades. It's been a very long time. And we're very thrilled to have John G. Wade Associates as our lead architectural consultants on the project. The construction budget will probably pan out to be about $5 million. So the full, $6.976 million includes the soft costs. So just full disclosure on that. That includes all of the design fees and managing the project and contingency. The project, as I had said, would be full restoration of the exterior and the interior of the house. It will include a proposed addition on the house to address program, and then full ADA access. And I know that this community board is very familiar with the location of this house and its setting, which is approximately 14 feet above Broadway. So the ADA access design challenge is certainly there, and we're very excited to present to you with what I think is a very creative solution for that. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the presenter for tonight, who is Nancy Rankin from John G. Wade Associates.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate that introduction. We've loved working with the Historic House Trust and the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance and all the folks at the Department of Parks and Rec. So we're excited to be here today to now present this to you and hear your feedback and comment from the Land Use Committee. So I will share my screen now and make sure you can all see that. Does that work for everyone?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. And now I just have to, there we go. Well, as John mentioned, the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum is currently occupied and managed by the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance. They do a wonderful array of really engaging interpretive and educational programs throughout the community, and are just a great group of people to have gotten to know in the last 6 months or so. As John mentioned, we have a very packed presentation today, so I'm going to be quite concise as best I can. We are looking at 4 different components of our presentation: constructing an addition, repairing and restoring the interior and exterior of the building, providing barrier-free access across the site and into the main first floor of the house and the lower level kitchen spaces as well, and rehabilitating the landscape. As you probably know where the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum is, it's quite an oasis in this community and maybe a little overgrown at this point. Here are just some contextual photos looking up and down Broadway to the site and from the site. And then just a reminder, this is a New York City landmark. It was one of the first designations in the city in 1967. It's also nationally significant, both listed on the register and individually identified as a National Historic Landmark. And it's one of the remaining Dutch colonial farmhouses in the city, the last in Manhattan. Just for everyone's interest, there are quite a lot of historic images. We've condensed this down to sort of show some of the major time periods. The house is built in 1783 after the Revolution by William Dyckman. And the first image that we know of is, you see on the left, the front of the house, and an 1830s addition shown to the right. View from the north, looking down what would become Broadway, showing again the main farmhouse, the white larger addition, and the circa 1830s addition in a pale yellow. Then 2 photographs sort of just before the turn of the 20th century. The Dyckman family no longer lived in the house. It was used by tenants and partially as a hotel. What you're seeing on the left image is another view of the front of the house, but now from the south end. So that is the addition that is there today, which historically was a summer kitchen. And then the image on the right is from the backside of the site, showing, I think, one of the few images of the rear of the 1830s edition. This is a view shortly after they lowered Broadway at the front of the house to accommodate streetcars. So you can see what John mentioned earlier, the significant grade change that resulted afterwards. The house was always elevated a flight of stairs up from the site to allow for a walk-in and walk-out kitchen at the lower level, but now there is a significant grade change on top of that. You can see also in this image, to the left, the existing summer kitchen addition, and to the right, the smaller addition from 1830 that is very shortly after this image removed. Then in 1916, a pretty significant moment in the history of the house. It was no longer owned by the Dyckman family at this point in time. And there was a real threat to the demolition of the house just due to the expanding development in the neighborhood. So descendants of the Dyckman family purchased the house, restored it to its colonial era, including removing the 1830s addition, and then donated the house to the city to be operated as a museum documenting its heritage. So again, just to summarize the first portion of this, we're looking to construct a 2-story addition at this end of the house, as you see in the photo there, construct an exterior ramp that will be associated physically with that addition and bring you up to the west porch that you see in this image, and then reconstruct that deck approximately 3 inches higher than it is now so that we can get seamless accessibility into the main center hall of the house for first floor access and experience of those rooms. These are a few elevations of the house. This is the front east side. The yellow box that you can see is the sort of form and scale of the former addition that was removed in the 1916 renovations, and the size and shape of the proposed addition. On the ground floor will be public access for restrooms and administrative space, and on the upper floor will be a new apartment for the site's caretaker. View of the back of the house with the existing house to the right and the addition shown to the left. You can see that same yellow box representing the historic form. And in this view, you can also see the ramp that we're proposing to provide accessible access to that west porch. This is the north elevation. Again, the smaller form of the historic addition. And what you're seeing here is the door of the proposed addition that would go into the public toilet accessible from the site. We've done a couple of diagrams working with the Landmarks Preservation Committee to illustrate to them the material, sort of physical impacts, as well as the visual impacts of this addition, comparing the historic connection of the house to what we're proposing today. This is a massing study illustrating the scale of the addition and its placement relative to the existing farmhouse. This is a view from Broadway. And this is a similar massing study, but looking from the lower area of the site down by the Hessian hut up to the west porch. This is a rendered view of the proposed west elevation, just illustrating the sort of character and coloring of the building and its relationship, the proposed addition to the historic farmhouse. I'll walk you briefly through these plans. On the basement level, today there is in the center here access to the interpreted kitchen of the house. This is the existing summer kitchen, which today is occupied by the caretaker. So moving them into the addition is a significant win for the museum in terms of regaining really terrific interpretive space. And then over here for the addition, it's really just footings and foundations for the 2 levels above. On the first floor, again, the footprint of the earlier addition. You have, again, in this space, the new administrative space, a stairway to access the caretaker's apartment, and then the entrance into the public toilet, which is also universally accessible. And then on the main floor of the house, period rooms that would be accessed by the ramp that takes you up to the west porch and straight in to the center hall. Second floor with a caretaker's apartment, so this would not be accessible to the public. These are the proposed materials. Again, a slide primarily to illustrate the compatibility between the addition and the existing historic farmhouse. A detailed view of the ramp. There's a significant grade here to negotiate, approximately 4 feet from the highest point of grade near this west porch up to that level. And just 2 quick illustrations existing on the left, proposed on the right, to show how we're raising the wood deck only to be able to get accessible entrance at this door off the west porch. Then we're reconstructing these stairs to be able to meet current building code. We're not making any changes to the width of the porch overall or to the roof line. For anyone who hasn't been there recently, these are some existing conditions photos. It's been very well maintained, but as John mentioned, significant capital investment is needed at this point to keep the historic structure in good condition. Images of the interior, some staff storage spaces, others period and interpretive rooms, a couple of details. And then this is a summary of what is the restorative scope of the project on the exterior and the interior. We'll be working through this at the staff level with landmarks to largely gain their concurrence with what's a pretty straightforward scope of work. These are photos illustrating the existing site conditions. It's beautiful in the fall and the spring and the winter. Don't have any winter photos. This is the existing site plan today. I want to call your attention to today's entrance, which is right on the corner of 204th Street and Broadway. And just, sort of the overall relationship of the site to the existing farmhouse and its addition that is currently there. These are just 2 sections to illustrate the significant grade change, really from the sidewalk at 204th Street to get up to the main level of the house. It's nearly 16 feet. This section illustrates, I think, really well how challenging a lot of the site is for programming. The Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance does a lot of outside programming, especially with school groups and summer camps. And due to the nature of the topography, it's really hard to find good space with the site as it is today. There are also 2 very significant beech trees at the rear of the house that we're looking to make sure we are able to protect and remain on the site. This is our proposed site plan. We are proposing the addition right here with the ramp, a new entrance that takes place further back along 204th Street, and you'll see why in a minute. And just general sort of rehabilitation of the site, as well as some additional outdoor programming space on both edges of the historic house and its new addition. What was really key in a lot of our discussions, both with the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance and with the Department of Parks and Recreation, was trying to find a universal point of access both into the site and then across the landscape to the house, that was a common path of travel that was available to experience the park completely that way. So this is just a diagram with moments illustrated here of how you move through the site to come to this program space, up a constructed ramp Most of the rest of this is pathways either in their current existing location or added along the back here. That gets you to the public amenities that are provided in the new addition, up the accessible ramp and into the main first floor of the house, and even across the front of the house and into the interpreted rooms that are on the lower level, the kitchen and the summer kitchen, as well as the outdoor programmatic spaces over at this corner. It was a very challenging puzzle, and I have to give a lot of credit to our landscape architects, Terrain, who worked tirelessly with us on this to get us to this point, which we're pretty proud of. These are some of the proposed materials for the landscape. And then we just wanted to show you briefly work that's happening to the existing perimeter wall and fence. This is today's existing entrance at 204th Street. It's a little narrow and very steep. These are the elevations showing the wall and the gate. This is our proposed reconfigured stair, providing a much better code compliant rise and run and a little more gracious gate entrance. These drawings just show both the photograph of what it looks like today and where the impact will be to reconstructing the wall and where the gate will be located. And then this is the proposed entrance on 204th Street with a main pedestrian entrance here, nice welcoming sort of mini piazza, if you will, that can lead you either directly up some stairs. This is a historic sort of route that would have existed at the park before, or directly straight along through the accessible route. We'll also be locating a curb cut in this area to relate to a loading and unloading space for maintenance and any event activities that might take place across the site. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of renderings that kind of take you along this path through the site so that you can sort of understand the approach and the way that people would arrive and get to the house. Renderings are on the left. They're a bit larger with existing conditions photos on the right. So this is the main entrance of the park from just outside on the sidewalk. As you enter the site with the reconstructed smokehouse in the front here and the existing farmhouse in the back. Along this very gradual path heading towards the beech trees, the west porch of the house here, getting a little closer towards the Hessian Hut programming area. This is the hut itself here. Right now, a sort of picnic zone that we're showing here. This is the constructed ramp that as you sort of navigate around the site and up, it's kind of tucked into the corner so that has as little of an impact on the program area as well as the historic farmhouse. Looking back at the Hessian Hut and back along the site we just came, here's the historic farmhouse with the new addition. And then the view from the west porch, looking back towards the Hessian Hut and the ramp that's a little hard to see, and the new ramp that would access the west porch here. So that, in a very concise nutshell, is a very extensive program, and I think we are interested to hear any questions that you may have or any comments that you may suggest. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I see Steve Simon's hand, but I want to ask a question first. Because you're dealing with both landmarks and SHPO, and I know they...
Actually, Wayne, no.
No?
No, there's no state historic preservation office requirement because there's no state or federal funding.
Okay,
and by the way, Wayne, I forgot to mention that you had asked me to say what we're seeking from you today. If I could just quickly say that we're here today to present the project, receive your feedback and comments, and hopefully receive your endorsement for this project that you can forward on to your cultural and landmarks committee, as well as onto the full board. We would love to have Community Board 12 CB12's endorsement for both of the projects we're presenting tonight.
And actually, landmarks is handled by land use, so we're it. And Parks and Culture, we decided not to torture you to make you do 2 presentations. So, they deferred to us, although the assistant chair of Parks and Culture may be joining us as well. But yes, we would, expect to pass a resolution and for it to go to the full board, which will meet the 4th Tuesday of this month. So getting back to my question, so even though it's both a city landmark and National Register listed, you're not dealing with SHPO. But I guess my question is, I knew there was an addition, an historic addition that was demolished. I think it was about 50 years old when it was demolished. And I thought the new addition was basically building back something of the same scale of the historic addition, but you're actually building something larger. So I'm just curious as to the conversations you had with LPC about that.
John, I'm happy to start with that if you want.
Please.
We have had some initial conversations with the staff. I would say that, one of the things that in the early stages of a design project you always look to do is try to understand the programmatic need. And I think, the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance is such a dynamic entity, and they're living in such cramped quarters and in spaces that could otherwise be museum interpreted spaces on top of the caretaker space, that the program, we've already reduced it as sort of tightly as we can, but it really is just demanding a larger envelope than what the historic edition could provide. So our initial conversations with this staff have been talking a little bit about precedent for how to address that, and looking at really trying to be compatible in scale and material so that it's perceived as an appropriate addition to the farmhouse, and that the programmatic need is, I would say, really urgent, and what is pretty critical for this project to succeed. John, do you have more that you'd like to add, or Meredith?
Just one additional thing, and then Nancy, that was said really very succinctly. So the only thing I would add is that we're not proposing a reconstruction of the addition that was demolished. This is actually a new addition that's being done in the spirit of that addition, which sort of balanced the house. We find that with Dutch colonial farmhouses, very often they are sort of bookended by these smaller additions. It's quite a common vocabulary for them, those that have survived and those that have been recorded and documented. So we do feel that this does reflect very much the spirit and the balance of the addition that was demolished. And the age of that addition Wayne had asked about, Nancy, I think it is more than just 50 years. Is that correct?
Yes. We don't have an exact date. I think it shows up on an 1830s map. We do believe that it was a house that was moved next to the historic farmhouse, between its styling and the fact that there wasn't a direct connection between the house and the addition initially. That happened after the Dyckman family moved out. Leads us to believe that it was really placed adjacent to it. And if you look more closely at one of the diagrams, which I'm happy to bring up, reconstructing that would really, it would sort of place the form of the building across 2 of the windows. It was a somewhat awkward relationship historically. So we're looking to not repeat that from a technical and maintenance point of view as well.
And I believe it was probably very close to 70 years old before it was demolished.
I didn't answer that question. Yes. Yep. I think almost 85 years old.
Meredith, do you have any additional comments?
No, I think you guys pretty much touched on it. I guess the only thing I will add is that is just the way we've been operating as an organization, which is, when I first started, there was a staff of myself and one other person, and now there are 4 of us, as well as at any given time, at least 4 interns. So we are today kind of cramped together in one room, which would have originally been a bedroom. So part of the idea of this addition gets us out of the historic part of the house, and we could actually use that space programmatically, and would put us staff-wise in the addition, and I think would really help expand our ability to serve the community.
And then I would further add that the public toilets is a very important component of this proposal. As any of you who have been to the Dyckman Farmhouse have probably used the toilets, which are presently located under the porches. Very often you need to duck. The ceiling heights are so low. I believe they are at 6 feet tall or under. And
they're definitely below that, yeah.
Yeah, they do not come anywhere close to meeting the code. And there would really be no other place to put public toilets except for in a new addition on this site. And so that is another really important component to this project.
Thank you. As I said, I saw Steve Simon's hand, and Steve, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I should state that I work for the New York City Parks Department, and I will not be voting on this item, but I can participate in the discussion. What I want to point out, first of all, and then I have a couple of questions, is how adroit this particular plan is in terms of providing accessibility. When we first talked about having an accessible ramp up to the farmhouse, I think some of us were envisioning some kind of huge structure that was going to span over a good portion of the site and bring people up from 204th Street up to the building. And here what we find is that we're actually using basically the existing landscape, and the new ramp is hardly intrusive at all. It's off to the side. Hardly anybody is going to think of it as taking away any valuable space. So I think it turns out what we originally thought we were possibly funding is been completely changed and is a much better idea. I'm assuming there'll be sufficient signage when you first walk in, so that you'll direct people to the accessible path and to this other path that leads up towards the south side of the building. So, so my 2 questions are: number one, it looks to me as though the existing caretaker's apartment is hardly an apartment. It looks as though there's very little space there at all. So, isn't it fair to say that what we're now providing is a much more livable space for the caretaker as well?
Yes, right now the caretaker actually has a single room, a small kitchen with a bathroom off to the back, and then a steep set of stairs to a sleeping loft. What they'll have at least is a slightly larger and contiguous space with a proper bedroom with a door and adequate ceiling height throughout. So you are right. It's definitely an improvement for the caretaker.
Yeah, well, I think that's worth mentioning. And speak a little more about what you would now do with that space in the where he's now living.
I can speak to that unless you'd like to, Lindsay.
No, go ahead, Meredith. Yep.
The space that the caretaker currently occupies is the summer kitchen, and we believe that actually to be the oldest portion of the house. That's another area where we believe that they took a building that existed on the farm and moved it and attached it to the to what is now the museum. So we believe that dates actually to earlier in the 1700s than the rest of the house. So ideally, if the caretaker function moves into this addition, then the current caretaker apartment could become programmatic space.
So, and in other words, it would be open to the public.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be the public would have more of an experience in visiting the farmhouse.
Yes.
So my last question is the roof of the addition appears to differ from the existing building. It looks as though the existing building, maybe it's red brick, and it looks as though the addition is going to have some kind of a gray metal maybe. Can you explain why you're not coming up with something that would match the existing roof?
So that was a purposeful design decision to just draw a little bit of distinction between this new addition and the historic materials of the house, but to do something that is somewhat historically appropriate in terms of the timeline of the house. And there had been, it appears, sheet metal roofing, which is what is proposed for the addition, a standing seam roofing at one time on the structure. The existing farmhouse is wood shingled. And so in order to just draw a very slight distinction really and not be too imitative of the historic farmhouse, we chose to use a different yet contextual and somewhat historically contemporary material.
And even have a different color.
Yes, sort of natural material color. We're not looking to paint it anything, at all. It would not have been copper, so it will likely be a sort of gray metal color, consistent maybe with tern or a lead-coated product.
Thank you. Jim, Berlin.
I just have a comment. The museum was probably the first museum I went to as a kid. And this was just like the first museum to any kid. It's like a revelation, that there are such places. And my favorite thing, of course, is that all the ceilings are very low because I was low to the ground then and I still am. So that made me feel well, actually, it was my revenge of the tall people. But I love that place and I've been back since. It's just, now, did I understand? I may not have understood correctly. The second floor will no longer be accessible to visitors. Is that correct?
Of the main farmhouse, it will still be accessible to visitors. It will not be accessible to visitors who use a wheelchair. It
Right,
isn't
okay.
today.
Yeah.
And the main floor of the house is not accessible either. So we're expanding accessibility to the interior of the house by providing access through the west porch to get onto that main level, the main first
Right.
level,
So
the center hall.
yeah,
Mhm.
now I understand because, like the coolest thing actually in the bedroom upstairs is that thing you put under the bed with coals to keep yourself warm in the winter. I thought it was brilliant.
So,
So thank you for all the good work.
so the site will be accessible and the main floor of the farmhouse museum will be accessible.
And the caretaker's apartment.
And the caretaker's apartment. Actually, can you say a bit more about the sort of re-envisioning of the exterior space, in terms of use, or was there consideration given to, putting in other structures like gazebos, or would that have been not historically appropriate? So much of this, as Steve pointed out, is a function of the landscape. It's using the landscape to make, the site accessible. So give us a bit more about, how you approach that.
Sure. Maybe I'll first talk about what's there now and why it's there, and then briefly talk about, we had a sort of thematic strategy. So the historic farmhouse is on the site, proposed addition. The Hessian hut is actually a reconstruction, but done really under the direction of Reginald Bolton, who was a significant archaeologist of this area in the Dyckman neighborhood, and did quite a lot of work on these structures in particular that remained after the Revolutionary War. And so through archaeological research, reconstructed a Hessian hut down in this lower area to be understood and interpreted, not directly connected to the farmhouse, but of that Revolutionary War time period. The house also exhibits quite a bit of his findings from the site as well. And then over here is a reconstructed smokehouse, as well as a small well head, right now currently covered. And that's a good segue into the kind of thematic framework that we had for sort of clarifying a little bit the design of the park and using the accessible route to experience different zones. Sort of imagined this area where there can be some interpretive gardens associated with the two kitchen spaces and the smokehouse and the well, sort of colonial era structures that would have been supporting the house and the kitchen functions in particular. This area we've kind of called the farmhouse era, sort of the early colonial period, just as a conceptual framework, and that you are able to kind of understand the relationship of these working spaces to the house, potentially. And outdoor demonstrations that connect directly to interpretive programs of the house could be, really clearly undertaken. Back here, because of the significant trees and the limited intervention we were seeking to do, we've sort of called this the natural area as a way to get you in from the street into the park setting itself. Over here, because of the Hessian hut, we've largely left this as it was planned, a sort of Revolutionary War kind of moment on the site to kind of understand that context relative to the house. And then because there was both a significant investment in sort of the park nature in 1916 and again by the Department of Parks and Recreation in the 1930s, sort of more formal programmed area that works with a lot of those materials and that language to provide some good outdoor and contemporary functional, new utilities kind of space for the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Alliance. Does that help give you a little bit more about how we see different programs happening? I don't know, Meredith, if you'd like to add more of how you see yourself using the space.
I think that this will just, some of this work will just help us kind of expand and have more space that's actually usable. The area down near the Hessian hut where it says accessible seating area and program space, that space is really nice and shaded. So that's a great place to do summer programming, as is the back porch, as is the area off to the right of the addition and that open green space near the Hessian hut. So I think that this will provide a much more welcoming opportunity for visitors to come in, but I think it'll also make the space more usable. And, Nancy mentioned the kind of the area that talks about productive gardening. If anybody's been there in the last however many years, you've seen our raised beds. So that's something that we might be able to move over to that area and just have things in more kind of an organized fashion.
And I'm assuming, I guess, given the prominence and importance of the beech trees, that, they're an integral part of the site design and will be protected as the work is moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yes.
Daniel.
Hey, I think this is a pretty cool presentation. I like what you guys did with this whole new ramp. My question is how much of the, I don't know how construction for preservation or like historical houses go, but how much of like the actual material of the house will you guys like reuse? And by any chance, like is the Dyckman family like still anything part of like this like whole reconstruction or rehabilitation?
I'm happy to address that part, Nancy, if you want to take the other part. We actually have a Dyckman descendant on our board. So he actually, up until a few weeks ago, was the treasurer of our board for many years, but is still on the board and very heavily involved, as is his family. So yes, they are very involved in what we do, very involved in this capital project.
And just to your question about how much of the house are we restoring, I would say the majority of the work that we're doing to the existing farmhouse, both on the outside and on the inside, is to either repair or preserve and extend the life of the majority of the materials. I would say with the exception, most likely, of the roof, Wood shingle roofs, when they are done, they are done. And this one really requires replacement to make sure that the building is watertight and properly protected.
And let's say something like the stairs on the bottom left where 204 and Broadway meet up. Like I've seen those stairs. Is that like a brand new staircase, or you guys like repurpose like those stones, like, and like even like that back area on 204, like that's like a brand new path, if I'm not mistaken. Like I'm pretty sure you guys have to like open up walls. Like, would you use those stones as like a stepping stone somewhere else? You know, just curious.
Yeah, no, you're right in step with our basic philosophy on reusing materials like that, especially with the perimeter wall, which appears to largely be Manhattan schist, very, you know, native local stone. It's not quite Inwood marble, but and any material that will be sort of unbuilding from this area that we're not reincorporating to sort of mesh really well with the historic wall itself, we'll probably be using in other areas where there are repairs along the edge. And then where there are new walls, we've got one small one here, and these walls here, we're going to try to source the same materials so that you get the same feel and scale and color and texture, but to do it in less of a rubble construction so that there's, again, a relationship, but not a direct copy, so that a discerning person can really kind of tell what was here before and what's part of a new intervention. But yes, recycling materials is a great way to kind of continue the history. We're talking about doing that also with some of the brick paving. Not all of that is in the best of condition because of freeze thaw and just a lot of hard use of the site across the site, but we are definitely exploring those issues. Great question.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments from committee members or board members?
Yeah, one more.
Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet before we go back to Steve? Vivian?
Yeah, there's something that's very appealing to me in the privacy that there now is in the garden in the back. It seems like it would be, with the addition, a very kind of peaceful place. And I don't know, I always think of the Dyckman farmhouse from the front and how noisy and sort of it stands out. And I feel like it must suffer from its exposure. And I think that this gives you a place to sort of be there more than what was there before or now.
Steve?
Yes, will people who are entering and going up the path on the south side of the building, will they be able to go around and enter from the front of the building?
Yes. Would you like me to show that accessibility plan again? I think I could do that. If you bear with me for 1 minute.
So this is not the accessible path?
Are you talking about this route here?
No.
Are you talking about this route?
Yes.
This does have stairs, but
Right.
it does connect all the way around. So there is a pathway all the way around. There's
Okay.
pretty significant grade right through here that just is not negotiable.
But this path could lead you around to the front if you wanted to enter to.
Yes. Oh yes.
If
Yep.
if
Come
you
along.
wanted to experience the walking into the front of the building as opposed to the back, you would have that option.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good.
But with that, Steve, I would like to add that the plan is to have the new main entrance at the western elevation of the house, which you're calling the back side of the house. So all visitors during public hours will enter through that entrance. So that way we are being equitable with people with disabilities, that there's not a separate entrance. And as we all know from Dutch colonial farmhouses, again, they often have Dutch doors that are opposite each other in the main hallway. So it is a very similar experience other than you're entering from the west. So that will be actually the new entrance for the museum. So all visitors that are arriving at the museum will enter from the western side of the facade.
All right, so the actual answer to my question is that you cannot enter from what is now the front.
You could. I mean, we're not blocking the entrance off,
Okay.
but the new entrance will be reoriented towards the west side of the property, and it actually makes a lot of sense. This all became very clear in the design process when we realized with that beautiful new entrance, you have this gorgeous view of the house, which makes the city kind of disappear for a moment. You're kind of immersed in the park, and you get a sense of maybe what it might have been like to be at this farm back in the day prior to the buildup of the surrounding neighborhood. So it's actually quite a wonderful experience if you choose to take the accessible route, or if you're able-bodied, you can go up the staircase.
And I think that goes to Vivian's point. By entering on the west side of the building, you're entering in a much quieter, more serene setting than entering off of a major, urban street.
It would have been impossible to have actually provided access to what is presently the front of the house. And so when that occurs, when that isn't possible, and when possible, then we rejigger the visitor experience. And here I would say that it's really not that much different than what it is today. It's quite a similar experience of entering on the porch, into the main hallway, through the Dutch door, into the space where you're greeted by the staff.
So there's a similar hallway in the back than what you have right now in the front.
It's the same hallway. There's a door on either side. You're not facing the staircase when you enter. You're entering kind of on the side of the staircase in the central hall.
And I'm assuming, just wrapping, because we do have another couple presentations, you're not going to be, uprooting or damaging any of the existing trees.
No, not at all. There is one tree that I believe, Nancy, you could speak to this, that is scheduled to be removed, that is dying.
I believe that's right here. Yep. And it's, I do believe that's scheduled to be removed. You've let us know that, John. Yeah.
Okay, so how would you like to handle this? Would you like to wrap the Dykeman Farmhouse presentation and have the committee vote on that before you go into the Morris Jamel?
I think that would probably make sense while it's still fresh in people's minds, but I would leave that to you. Your committee has a lot of experience with this.
I think it would also help with voting, because as Steve pointed out, since he works for Parks, I guess he will not be voting on either one of them. And since I'm on the Morris Jamel board, I will not be voting on the Morris Jamel one, but I will be voting on this. So my understanding is you plan to go to LPC, sometime this month?
I believe it's be scheduled for July.
Okay. So that means, if we pass a resolution tonight and it goes to the full board at the end of the month, it'll be more than sufficient time to get it to LPC for July meeting, which is appreciated. So I would ask if there is a motion from the committee to support the proposed restoration accessibility project. And my committee members would have to unmute themselves and not be quite so shy. Jim,
I moved that, and I also raised my hand, so I was a good boy.
Yeah.
I moved that we pass a resolution supporting this truly excellent project that will bring the amazing experience I had as a kid to yet more people and people who are less able than I happen to have been at the time. I think it's a wonderful thing.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, just for our new committee member and board member, the way voting will take place is the committee votes first, other board members vote second, and then at committee meetings, members of the public also vote. So unlike the general meeting where it's only board members, We'll go in that order. So first, those committee members in favor, if you could raise your hand to make it easy to track. Okay, I see 5 committee members, and I know that Steve is not voting, right?
Not voting.
Thank you. So if everyone, if the board members can take their hands down. Excuse me, if the committee members can take their hands down, then the board members in favor. Okay, so the board members can take their hands down. And then members of the public who wish to vote can do so by raising their hand as well.
Did you get Noble's vote in favor?
I didn't know Nobles had joined us.
He's in the chat. In fact, there are a number of questions.
Oh, wait, Steve, stop. I'm doing one thing at a time. So I see 10 attendees and actually 2 other. So I see 12. Now, Nobles is in here as a panelist or as an attendee?
I don't.
He's in as an attendee. I see him as an attendee.
Okay, let me find him and
I'll take care of it.
I got it. Nobles, sorry, when did you join us? Nobles, you should be able to speak now. Nobles, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, yes, I'm so in favor of this and Parks and Community Affairs.
Okay, your volume is kind of low.
So in favor of this, Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee checking in. I see you, Sally. Aye. Thank you.
Okay. As I mentioned, Nobles is the assistant chair of Parks and Culture. And so Parks and Culture is represented.
Glad to be here.
And yes, Steve, I saw a number of questions, and you notice I was asking a number of questions about, trees and use of exterior space, and the like. Okay, so we can move on to the Morris Jumel.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Again, John Krawczyk here from the Historic House Trust. I'm the executive director. This is the second project of the evening that we'll be presenting to you this evening. I would like to note for the record that Lisa Konensberg, the board chair of Morris Jumel Inc., has also joined us. And as I'd mentioned earlier, Shiloh Hawley also is the executive director, is also with us on today's call.
And I believe there are also a number of Morris Jumel trustees also with us.
Oh, okay. Would you like to mention them, Wayne? I cannot see them, but including you, of course. But would you mind just mentioning them if you happen to see them on the call? I saw.
Sure. Let me open this up so I can see them.
Okay. And meanwhile, I'll just sort of
Sure.
continue on here, and then when I end, you can just note them for the record. That would be great. We really
well, since I see, let me just say, Conchita Pierce is with us. Jim Kerr is with us. And that's it. I just see Jim and Conchita, and of course, you've already mentioned Lisa, who is our board chair.
Great. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. So the next project is the Morris Jumel Mansion. It's an exterior restoration and ADA accessibility upgrade, which includes some site improvements. It also includes the reconstruction of an interior toilet on the first floor to make that accessible. Again, our design consultants are Page Ayers Cowley Architects, And we're joined tonight by Eric DeFranzio, who's going to be presenting the project to you. The budget for the project is $2.589 million. And we're very excited to also bring this project to you, which is similar in nature in a way to what you were just presented, with the exception that we are not proposing an addition to the house. They have plenty of space. We are proposing an ADA accessible ramp, the interior toilet, full restoration of the exterior envelope of the house, and that is what we'll be presenting tonight. I would like to just say, yes?
Could I interrupt you for a second, John? Daniel, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Sorry, it's an old hand. I forgot to put it down.
Not a problem. Go ahead, John.
Okay, and then just by way of introduction to the project, the image that you can see on the screen presently, which will be enlarged once we begin the presentation, I think sort of speaks very strongly to our whole approach to this project, which is, as you know, there's one entrance to the site, the Morris Jumel Park. And so through that entrance, the accessible route will take you towards the front of the house, which is what you're seeing in this image, and over to the eastern side of the house, the eastern facade, where the accessibility is proposed. And then that way, similar to the Dyckman farmhouse, that will serve as the new entrance for the public as they visit the site, so that everyone enters through the same doorway. And so with that, I will turn it over to Eric to begin the presentation.
Thank you, everyone. 1 second.
Can I just say a few words before we start on this?
Sure.
Real quick? I think it's very germane, and I think you'll enjoy it. When we were offered, this is Paige Cowley, by the way, when we were looking at the house almost now a year and a half ago, I found a quote or a story written in 2 parts in July and August of 1917 in the Architectural Record. And it is by a remarkable colonial historian, fanatic. But these are the words that have stuck with this design team. Everyone has embraced it, and I share it with you now. When we consider the long varied existence of the Morris House, and remember that it has been in turn a mansion in the strictest 18th century sense of the word, a tavern, or a roadhouse, and later, as Washington noted, a country house in more or less rundown condition, in the possession of a common farmer. It seems remarkable that so little new work appears in the building, and that the house should be at the present day, but with few exceptions, so consistently colonial. Few houses indeed, even among those that have been considered worthy of preservation as architectural monuments, regardless of historic associations, have been so little changed in the course of time as the Morris House has. So I just want to reassure you that, yes, it's time to help the house be visited by people that really would enjoy the experience. But it is virtually intact. Those of you who live in the neighborhood know it looks horrific. It looks like it has some sort of skin disease. But you must know that the team that we are working with, our landscapers, structural engineer, don't want to touch anything until we know if it's actually original or if it's a repair. And if it's a repair, we're going to have to use first growth lumber throughout, because it would start to warp and twist the existing. So this is probably one of the most extraordinary and interesting conservation and restoration projects. I'm so happy to be part of it. So Eric, take it away.
Thank you. Just a brief explanation of the scope of work. So what we're going to be presenting tonight is the portion of the project that involves the ADA accessibility upgrades to the mansion, as well as replacement of missing railings at the roof of the mansion. The restoration portion of the house is still underway in terms of determining the complete scope of work there, and that portion would be staff level approval at landmarks and not subject to the certificate of appropriateness. So I'll walk you through some of the site context. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the park, but just a couple of quick slides in the context here. The mansion sits at sort of the center of the park towards the southern end, and the entrance is off of Jumel Terrace facing the west side of the mansion, and you can see the sort of circulation paths, existing walking paths sort of around the full 360 degrees around the mansion and then around the park as well. This slide is just to show a context of the boundaries of the historic district, as well as the landmark site, which is the park itself, and the mansion is an individually designated landmark, as well as an interior landmark. Some historic photographs here on the top left. This is a image of the main elevation of the house from 1904. On the bottom left is an early wood engraving of the house. And I'll zoom in here so you can get a better view. You can see some of the missing railings presently don't exist on the roof on both ends of the house, as well as over the side entrances there. So the part of the project is to reinstate those missing components. And then a later photograph from 1915 where you can see the railings missing at the roof. This is a existing site plan of the park. Again, the entrance here at the west side of the park. The beige color here is the circulation paths around the mansion. These are brick walking paths, and the blue are bluestone walking paths, as well as the bluestone plaza at the south side, which is the main elevation of the mansion. Some photos here for context. This is the entrance to the park here. This is a typical walking path that surrounds the mansion there. And a view of one of the non-accessible walking paths that leads to the west entrance of the house. This is directly in front of the park entrance on the west side. And then on the east side of the mansion, looking back towards the area of the park entrance, you can see a view of the Bluestone Plaza there, and then a view of the existing main entrance and main elevation of the house as it exists today. Now, this is our proposed site plan, and you can see from the park entrance along the red dotted line is the sort of circulation path that we're proposing for the house. People would enter and turn to the south. Everyone would get to experience the mansion sort of in 360. They would be able to walk through the Bluestone Plaza, experience the main entrance of the mansion, and then what we're proposing, which I'll go into a little bit more detail on a later slide, is an ADA accessible ramp on the east side, which leads up to the east porch. There will be some modifications to those existing brick walking paths to accommodate the ramp, and a modification to the porch on the east side of the building to raise it up one step to match the existing floor level at the first floor level to accommodate that entrance. And as John mentioned, part of the thought process here was to allow wheelchair accessibility into the mansion, but also to reincorporate this eastern entrance as the main entrance for all visitors, so that everyone has that same experience as they enter the park. They get to experience the exterior of the mansion, walking almost all the way around to it before they all get to the entrance. If I zoom in here a bit, you can see this entrance leads to the central entry hall, which is also where the current entrance is off the southern elevation. And then some photos in the area where the ramp is proposed. On the top left, this is sort of an overall view looking back at the east porch in the distance there. a close-up view of the side of where that entrance is. So this is where the ramp would be constructed in this location. And then a view along the walking path on the east side of the mansion, which would be slightly rerouted to accommodate the new ramp. Now, we looked at several possibilities for trying to situate the ramp in terms of providing accessibility, as well as trying to locate it in a way that would be the most appropriate for the mansion. We first studied if there were any possibilities of locating an accessible entrance at the main south elevation. As you can see from these photos, the existing porch has quite a bit of a slope to it. This slope actually exceeds what would be permissible for an ADA compliant approach to an entrance. And then again, at the entrance here, you can see there's a step up to the main doorway. So if we were to propose accessibility at this porch, we would be looking at a fairly significant intervention to modify this porch to decrease that slope to within wheelchair compliant approach, and then an additional construction on top of it to navigate that step at the main entrance. So that was sort of
Eric, Panchita Pierce is asking whether you can speak a little louder.
Sure. Is that better?
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So for these reasons, we decided against the south porch modifications and locating the entrance, accessible entrance at the main elevation. And then some context photos of the east side of the mansion from the eastern side of the park. You can see this area alongside is where the first segment of the ramp would be located. And then an overall view here, you can see where it would turn the corner to reach the eastern porch there. And then some close-up views of the location here. So if I zoom in on this photo, you can see this is the porch where we're proposing the entrance. The porch would be reconstructed to raise the platform level up to the interior floor level. And then the ramp would be in the location of this walking path currently here. Now, there's an existing side entrance here, which is a non-functioning entrance. There used to be a small porch and a stoop at this location. And there's a potential desire to reinstate that stoop as part of a future project. So I will walk you through how we navigate that here. So this is sort of an enlarged view of the proposal, and you can see as you approach from the south from the Bluestone Plaza, there will be a reconstructed brick pathway that would sort of turn out towards the east slightly to allow for the ramp to be constructed in this location. So what that does is it pulls the ramp away from the building for a few reasons. We can't construct it too close to the existing stairway that's in this location, which leads down to the colonial kitchen in the basement. So we need to maintain a bit of a distance there to not undermine the retaining wall in that location. And then also this dotted line, as you can see here, is the location of that former stoop at the side door, which is inactive. And we didn't want to prohibit that from being reconstructed in the future or block any sort of passageway that may be something that is part of a future project. So the ramp will first extend up towards the north, and there'll be an intermediate landing taking you across to the reconstructed east porch and then into the central entry hall, which is here. And then also we are proposing to construct a new a bluestone walking path leading to a new set of stairs up to that west entrance so that all visitors would enter through this location. This is a view of the existing and proposed east elevations, existing elevation on the top, proposed on the bottom. You can see the sort of the side view of the ramp here. We're proposing to construct the ramp in very simple detail. It will be a wood frame, structural frame for the ramp, and then for the roof railings as well as for the ramp, we're proposing to construct it out of a composite wood material. And that is due mainly to the desire to maintain, the desire to construct it in a material that would be low maintenance, not require a lot of upkeep. The appearance would be identical to that of painted wood. And you can see here where we're showing the reconstructed railings over the east porch, as well as on the upper roof at the octagon wing and the main wing of the house. These, the design of these railings matches the historic record. Recently, there was some storm damage and the remnants of the railing that was on the octagon wing had to be taken down, but they've been stored and documented so that we can replicate the railings to match exactly what was there previously. But as I mentioned, this will all be a composite wood material, which is essentially wood fibers with some binders, and it will be essentially maintenance free. And we can avoid, some of the damage that has occurred over time. So that's something that would be subject to the certificate of appropriateness approval there. And then turning the corner to the north elevation, you can see the other side of the ramp from the north as it turns and approaches the east porch there. And then there will be a short set of steps also leading for non-wheelchair visitors up to that eastern porch. And a section view here, you can see the relationship through the interior corridor of the house, where the raised east porch would be would match the interior floor level, and the porch on the western side would remain in its current configuration. This is the south elevation, where you can see the reinstated railings at the roof. The rest of the work at this side of the building would be restorative in nature, aside from that reconstruction at the top. Similarly, along the west side, the scope of work would be to reinstate the railings at the side entrance on the western porch, as well as the upper roof railings here. And here's some a detail of the upper roof railings, as well as some photographs, archival photographs. This one from the Olmsted Archives, a 1934 photograph, and some Habs photography. And then the top right is one of the earliest depictions we have dating from 1854, showing these railings at both the side porch as well as the upper roof. And then here's a detail of the railings over the side entrances, which is a different design based on the historic context, the historic photographs that we have here. These railings no longer exist. So the design here is based on historic record and archival documentation that we have. So I'll go back to the slide here showing sort of the site context, the approach, accessible approach from the park entrance around to the proposed new entrance, and the ramp on the eastern side of the park. And John, if you have anything else you want to add, otherwise I think we can open to questions and comments.
John?
Nope, I have nothing further to add. Eric, thank you. It was a very thorough and nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
quick question. When you enter the park, instead of going right, if you go
Yes.
left, is that path ADA compliant?
So all of the brick paths were ADA compliant at one time. They do require some work because they've settled in some areas and there's some tree roots that have raised some of the bricks in certain locations. We did study, multiple ways, including approach from, turning towards the north. We looked at potentially making an accessible connection on the west side here. And there was a few reasons why we decided against going that route. We decided against any approach from the north, as we felt that it would feel as though we were really taking you towards sort of a secondary back of house.
That's
entry.
actually not my question. My question basically is, clearly one can walk around the building completely. If you have mobility impairments, if you're in a wheelchair, can you just go around the building completely as well?
You
The
can,
answer.
yes, with the exception of some of the conditions that require repair on these
Right.
walking paths.
And
The-
I'm
yeah.
sure that Parks and Culture will make sure our friends at New York City Parks takes care of those repairs, right, Nobles?
Don't sign me up for anything I can't cash there, bud.
I'm sure you and Liz will make them cash it.
There
We'll
are
do our
some
best.
repairs to these walking paths included as part of the capital project.
Right. And if I can just, I'm going to take a shot at clarifying this. And I think, John or Paige or some of the team clarified. So the complete project is the exterior restoration and the ADA access, which includes the interior bathroom work. What you're presenting to us now is the ADA access. And that's because it has to be approved by the LPC commissioners because it's visible from the outside and it's a change to the existing building. It's a change to what you can see from the public area. Whereas the restoration is not a change, it's restoring what's there, which is why the commissioners don't need to approve it. It can be approved at the staff level. Is that more or less
That's right.
correct?
Yeah, that's right. And also we're also still in the process of investigating and determining the full scope of restorative work. So that portion of the project is still ongoing. But what will be presented at the landmarks hearing will be the accessibility component and the roof railing replacement.
Questions, comments from the committee? Vivian.
Is the ADA path wide enough that people can at least pass each other on it?
Yes, it's about 6 feet wide.
All right, good. Thank you.
Jim Berlin.
Hi, I'd like to raise a point of order. Wayne, as you pointed out, you're a member of the board of the Morris Female Mansion or whatever it's called. As such, there either is a conflict of interest or something that would look like a conflict of interest. And therefore, and I am the parliamentarian of this board, it would be best if this part of the meeting concerning this structure which you're involved with is run by our assistant chair or someone else.
We can certainly do that, but someone needs to, kind of step up and do that. I've already announced that I'm a trustee and will not be.
Correct,
voting
but so
on that.
if Tanya feels up to it, we could.
Yeah,
turn
so
the
I'm
meeting
saying,
over to-
if Tanya wants to, walk the committee members, through Q&A. Tanya, you are muted, however.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Sure. So,
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Yes, so we're just taking questions from anybody on the committee. Who would have anyone else have questions for the presenters today regarding this issue?
I think Vivian's hand is an old hand.
Okay. And Jim, your hand is, that's an old hand for you too? Okay. Vivian, is that old hand or a new hand?
It's down.
Oh, okay. Any other committee members with questions? Any board members here with questions then?
OC Kamada has a question.
Oh, okay, great.
She would
Well,
have.
where is she at? Oh,
She's
okay.
she's an attendee.
Hold
Oh,
on.
okay, thank you.
Hold on a second. Hi, Dios mío, attendees.
I took care of it already.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, OC, if you can hear me and you are unmuted, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, guys. My question is in regards to the railing. I just don't understand why you're introducing a new design to the ADA ramp. Why? I understand that you try to keep it simple because it's the entrance, and I would think that it would be nice to have the style of the railing in line with the style of the railing on the roof. Additionally, if you go back to slide number 5, okay, the railing on the right photo. Can you please, correct. Can you please incorporate the change of this railing to be in line with the railing of the house? Because I'm looking at that and for me, it's like eyesore. It's not in line. It's not the same style. It's 21st century railing that need to, compete with the style of the railing of the house, and will be much nicer and more appealing to have that railing include with all the railing work you're going to do.
Sure. So I can respond to the first item as far as, let's bring it up. In terms of sort of the thought process behind the design of the railings for the ramp. So we've chosen to use a similar material that we feel is in keeping with the material palette of the mansion, but we wanted to keep the design simple so that it doesn't communicate that it's sort of copying a detail on the existing mansion. It is a later intervention, and we want sort of visitors to be able to understand that it's not something that is trying to mimic a historic detail, and this is a later addition. But at the same time, we think it's important that the material palette be compatible with that of other features of the mansion, so that it does feel like it belongs there.
The other issue too is that because of the 20-foot ramp on in an incline, to adjust the basket weave fencing that exists at the intermediate level, or with the open triangles, diamond pattern, it would be slanted and it looked contrived. So we took a much more conservative approach that this is our time. And this meets, as banal as it might seem, in contrast to the richness of the rest of the mansion, there's no confusion that this is something that we're trying to copy or mimic. As to the metal railing entrance to the park, I'm with you 100%. I think we've been so concerned about the railing on the to be able to have people come in and experience, whether you're handicapped or not, or just slow and walking like I feel sometimes, that everybody has the same experience going into the same door. That was one of my major concerns. And here, I think we can do better, but you're going to have to ask our client, John, and whoever other board members to let us do something special there. I agree. It would be lovely.
Okay, so I'm asking John right now.
Well, I guess my own, after 26 years with the Parks Department, I feel like this black metal railing that we're seeing in the image to the right, the photo to the right, is a fairly common landscape architecture language in parkland. And because it is not connected to the building, I guess maybe I'm not as so offended by it. You commonly see this throughout all of our most historic parks in Manhattan, including Central Park, Morningside Park. Steve is probably nodding if we could see him, but we can't. And so I'd be willing to take another look at it and see if there could be some way to make this a bit more attractive. But on the outset, I guess I'm not particularly concerned about it because of its distance from the building. It certainly serves the function to keep people from slipping when it's icy or wet, or just if again, you're feeling a little unsteady going down these steps, to have something to hold on to. But I'd be happy to take another look at that. And with regard to the ramp, the balustrades on the roof are very special. They really are sort of crowning elements on this building. And so I think we want to keep that specialness with regard to that feature, and really make the ramp itself appropriately designed with the sort of wood connection to the building, the wood look of the building, but not necessarily replicate a highly decorative thing that would take attention away from that beautiful cresting on the roof. And so the Landmarks Commission actually guided us in our approach to this and asked us to keep it quite simple. And when I say the commission, I mean the staff level input when we first sort of discussed this with them. And of course, the commissioners themselves will weigh in July when we take this before them.
At
Thank
least,
you.
John, I know we're not supposed to debate with my client in public, but if worse comes to worse, paint the black metal railing white, so at least it fits into a family of railings, shall we say, guided by color, if not style.
Thank you. Ozi, did that answer your question? Okay,
Yes, thank you.
you're welcome. Wayne?
Yeah, I would just point out, I mean, it's an interesting discussion, but I think we also need to look at that railing in the context of the park, because the park is surrounded by metal railing. And the question is the more critical relationship of that metal railing to the house to which it's not connected, or is it to the other metal railing that is in the park, but which isn't really featured in these photos? But if we've been to the park, we know that, you know, the perimeter is surrounded in railing, and you can see even the middle photo, number 2, off to the, well, now it's too big, you know, there's metal railing there. So it would be interesting to, you know, take a look at that railing and see what can be done that it's a little, you know, less, you know, average. But I think we might want to look at that railing in the context of other railings in the park.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Last call for any other board members present who may have any questions for the presenters. Last call. Okay. Being none, we do have, there is Peter Green who has a question from the public. And can he, okay. Okay. Peter? Can he be moved over to?
He doesn't need to be moved over. He can just.
Oh, he doesn't? Oh, okay.
He can just be unmuted.
Okay. All right. Okay, Peter, you should be able to start talking. You just need to unmute yourself to say yes.
He's unmuted.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, just as a frequent user of the mansion, mostly the park with my kids, because lots of neighborhood kids love to play on the lawn and run around in the garden there. There's really something extraordinary about being able to enter this mansion through the main entrance, climb up the stairs, even if they're rather steep, and then go into the house and feel the sense of grandeur that it was built with. And I would just urge you, to maintain that, even as I understand the need not to create a second-class experience for anybody, but I don't know how you square that circle. It's not my expertise, but as a user, I would just say, please preserve the ability of people to walk up the steps and into the mansion, because it really gives a feel of what it was like.
Yeah, I
Anyone
think
have
that's
okay.
sort of, that's the intent. I mean, the main entrance would not be off limits. It's just that, we want to create the possibility for all visitors to enter on that east side, so that it's not, wheelchair visitors are not the only ones that are sort of, directed to that location. But the idea is not to dismantle the ability to enter from the south.
So one could still enter from the grand porch.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. That is one of the major issues, is you can see the sloping and the splitting of the columns. That is, we've got some nice plans for this little entrance, and we will restore it, and it will be used. Thank you.
May I? My understanding about to address Peter Green's question, my understanding about the statement of needing to use that everyone would be directed to one entrance had to do with groups visiting the mansion. And so that, for example, if there is a group of school children, so that a group of those who require the ADA use entrance rather, will not feel that they are having a secondary experience, but that we will still be using the mansion as the main entrance, generally speaking.
Okay.
I don't know if that was any clearer, but
I agree.
That's right.
Because this building is, according to the curators and the special events that take place there, the main door is one of the ceremonial joys of going in through that door. It's only because we can't, without really corrupting the original colonial design, make a ramp to that entrance and then make the alterations there. So as Eric said, we wanted to create something that would be pleasant for everyone to go into, but still allow the front door to open and welcome visitors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tanya, you have
Yes.
Jim Kerr unmuted.
Yes, Jane. I'm sorry, Peter. Just we're going to take James Kerr, and you should be able to speak,
Yeah,
Mr. Kerr.
thank you very much. I just wanted to ask whether there isn't some way to gradually increase the elevation of the pathway to such an extent that it would not be necessary to have a separate structured ramp that is sort of rectangular and stands apart from the building. In other words, would it be possible to, gradually increase the elevation through an earthen elevation that would get you to the level that you need to enter it? You may need railings as you approach the door, but the separate structure, particularly given its angular appearance, strikes me as off-putting. Secondly, has the landmarks approved the use of composite material in the restructure the construction of the balustrades and also the ramp? And is that typical in historic preservation?
Well,
I can
for the
I can answer the second question first. The commission will be voting on this project in July. So to date we've met with the Landmark staff, and we've received some of their feedback, which has been incorporated into the presentation. So they will be voting on the use of the composite wood material as well as the ramp overall. And then in terms of regrading the park and maybe creating sort of an earth berm for accessibility, we are in fact regrading portions of the walking path to sort of lessen the overall length required for the ramp. But the ramp is required to, the vertical path of travel is about 3.5 feet, or a little bit over 3.5 feet, to get you up to where you need to be to enter the building. So it's not really possible without a ramp. But the ramp would be a bit longer than what it is now if we weren't doing some regrading on that eastern side. The other reason why we can't really regrade the park to more of an extent than we are in this design is that the building already in the basement suffers from a lot of water infiltration. There's some water damage to the foundations, and water gets in various points around the perimeter of the building. And you can see in some of these photographs here, what we have around the entire perimeter of the building is this integral stone gutter system. So the building doesn't actually have gutters on the roof. The way it was designed is the rainwater drips off the edge of the roof, and this perimeter gutter system sort of diverts it away from the building. So we can't disturb how that stormwater system performs. And then also we have concern about, if there's any drastic sort of regrading within close proximity to the house, we would be exacerbating some of the water infiltration issues on the foundation. So we did look into that, and we've incorporated it to the extent that we think is appropriate for the house without causing problems for the foundation system.
And Ms. Crawley, did you have something to add to that? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Paige.
She can unmute herself.
Yes.
Sorry. No, Eric, I wanted to make sure that he showed this detail, because this house is unique with the highly pitched roof. The water, as Eric said, drips into this, what looks like a mistaken pathway, but in fact, it is the drain that directs all the water off the property and away from the sandstone base.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Tanya, not to interrupt, but we have a third presentation. So I would suggest we take a vote on this one so that we can move into the other.
Okay, so we just need a motion. Someone who can make a motion from the committee to in favor of this this project. Is anyone who would like to make the motion?
I move that our committee support this project.
Okay, do we have a second? Vivian?
I'll second it, yes.
Okay, so Vivian seconded. Okay, so now we just have to put it to a vote, correct?
Correct.
So all those committee members who are in favor, if you can raise your hand. Okay, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I have 4 that I'm counting here. In favor? Any opposed? Okay, so you all can put your hands down.
You should also ask if there are any abstaining, but there are.
Oh, any abstentions, sorry.
And then you have 2 not voting.
Okay, so two not voting, so,
And that would be myself and Steve.
and Steve, okay, all right, great. Okay, and any board members, everybody else can put their hands down, that would be great, so we can
Including
concentrate on.
yourself, Tanya.
Right, I'm gonna lower mine. And so any board members in favor? Okay, one. Any opposed?
Hang on a second, because do we see Nobles anywhere still?
Okay, so I'm seeing two, Sally,
Yeah.
Luana, where's Nobles?
I'm just wondering what happened to Nobles.
Yeah, I don't see him anymore either.
Okay, well,
OC can vote.
yeah, but where is she?
She's here, but she's here. She doesn't have her hand up for, I see two board members' hands in
Yeah,
favor.
so I mean, we vote.
Okay.
We have what we
Yeah.
have.
Okay, and so any opposed? Board members? Board members only? Put your hands down if you've already voted. Any board members opposed? None, I see. Any board members abstaining? No abstentions that I see? Okay.
Public?
Public members? Public attendees, rather. Okay, you can just put your hands up. That would be great. Okay, I'm seeing.
I saw 7, which went up to 8.
Yeah, I did. We're back down to 7, right? So 7 in favor. Okay, any opposed? If you could put your hands down if you've already voted. If you've already voted, you can put your hands down. Peter, I believe you voted.
Peter, Panchita.
Okay, if you've already voted, if you could please put your hands down so we have a correct count.
Just so you know, I have no control over that.
No,
I understand. I understand.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so any
Gracias.
opposed? So are we saying that 2 people are opposed?
Well, I mean, just for reference, Panchita.
They can
here
also speak.
Is a board member, so I don't know if she's saying she's opposed to her facilities project.
Yeah, but I'm seeing.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay, so I'll just won't count her. But Afua, I guess there's one pan I see that's as opposed. Then not counting Panchita. Okay,
May
so
I
one.
ask a question? When you refer to board members, why is Panchita voting?
No. She's voting as a member of the public.
Right.
I mean, as Tanya said, we're now, tallying votes from members of the public.
So Morris Jamel board members can be considered members of the public?
For the purpose of this meeting, yes, because it's
okay. Great. So did you ask who of the public votes
so
in favor?
So let's do that again. Yes, Tanya asked members of the public. So if you're not a member of Community Board 12, if you're in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand.
And if we could just repeat what we've done. So if you've already voted, vote again. So if you're in favor, please raise your hand.
And Lisa, you're not able to raise your hand on the system?
No, otherwise I would gladly do it.
Okay, so we need to add 1, 2, so we're up to 9.
9, yes, got it.
So everyone, please take your hands down.
And I would hope that those members of the board who are present would consider supporting this.
Right, so everyone who've already voted, please take your hands down.
Any opposed?
Yeah, so now Tanya's asking for members of the public who are opposed. Or abstaining.
Okay, so I don't see any opposed and any abstentions. I don't see any hands, so.
Yes, okay,
Yep.
so
we're good.
We're good, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Wayne, could we just quickly answer somebody's question in the Q&A as to whether the exterior restoration includes repainting and new shutters? Could Paige or Eric answer that?
I'm sure they can.
Yes, it definitely includes repainting. We're still working through determining the overall scope of work. If the budget allows, then shutters would be great. But at the moment, we're still wrapping our arms around, the full scope of work and the needs of the building. So that
Painting is a definite.
Yeah.
painting is a definite, yes.
And
So
the intention is to complete this project certainly before 2026, the 250th anniversary of the Republic.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, very good.
Tanya, can you add me? I'm sorry, I was away for a second. Can you add me as a yes? Board
Okay,
member
yes.
voting yes. Thank you.
Okay, so one additional board member of the community board, board member, who has voted in favor, for the record. Okay. All right. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you to the HHT Parks team and to the, I guess, the members of both the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum Board and the Morrisville Mansion Board. We're now moving along to a presentation of a proposed development at a site that has many, many, many addresses. So not to confuse us, it's 406, 407 West 206th Street, which also goes by 430 West 207th Street or 408 West 207th Street. And I think at the last meeting, Steve Simon, who also chairs our Health and Environment Committee, mentioned that this is the site of a brownfield cleanup, and there was some preliminary discussion about this site in Health and Environment. This presentation pertains to the proposed development, which I got some information on last week, and I pointed out that since it is largely a residential development and includes an MIH application, it's also important for this presentation to go before our Housing and Human Services Committee. But with that, I would turn the floor over to the development team, and they can walk us through the project, and of course begin by introducing yourselves and who the team is, and clarify the location of the site for.
Of course, yeah. To keep it simple, this is the 80,000 square foot site at the corner of 207th Street and 9th Avenue. I'm sure most people in the neighborhood know it as sort of the former Pathmark site in the area. Sort of sits right at the foot of the 207th Street bridge there. So you've got me from the development team. My name is George Sapelis. I am with Taconic Partners. Also presenting will be Catherine Kellman from LMXD. We also have on the Zoom tonight, Lee Whitman from Fried Frank, who helped us put together the fresh application, and Ken Lowenstein from Holland and Knight, who helped us put together the MIH application. So the project is being developed as of right under the 2018 rezoning. And again, we'll be going through in some detail tonight, just the fresh application and the MIH applications, both of which were submitted to the board. And as we understand, we spoke to city planning today, and they expect to give their internal sign off of the fresh application this week, and then forward it along to you. So again, I'm with Taconic Partners. We acquired the site in late 2015. Early last year, we brought on LMXD and M Squared as partners. We previously worked together with LMXD down at the F6 Crossing development on the Lower East Side. And so sort of the division of duties is M Squared is going to be working on the financing and structuring of the project. L&M and Taconic will be co-developing the project with L&M acting as builder. L&M's management arm will handle the lease up of the affordable units, and then Taconic will ultimately manage the property. Oops, sorry. So again, just to give some good context here, it's the 80,000 foot site right here at the foot of the 207th Street Bridge. Very important to note that it is comprised of two separate tax lots. So lot 9, which is a 60,000 foot site to the west side here, and lot 21, which is a 20,000 foot site on the east. The fresh application will be entirely applicable to lot 21 when we get into the details of that. So just some important things about the site, very transit oriented. You can see, stone's throw away from the subway station here. Sort of adjacent properties directly to the north, we have the MTA rail yard. Sort of to the south and the east here, we've got sort of a lot of the one-story wholesale uses in the neighborhood, and then some residential sort of to the west and the southwest. There are not any sort of historically significant sites sort of direct proximity to the neighborhood. And one thing we'll get into in greater detail when I start sharing some renderings of the site is how we've tried to clean up both the pedestrian and the vehicular traffic into and out of the site to try to remove some of that from 207th Street. So just some more context here. This is this is looking east along 206th Street. So here you've got the southern side of the site. This was the old supermarket site here. So the old Pathmark, and we think it's important as part of the fresh to reintroduce the supermarket use to the site. This is looking south along 9th Avenue. So this is our site here. And again, showing one of the adjacencies, which is the beer and soda wholesaler across the street. And then these two images at the bottom are sort of looking northwest and north at the MTA rail yard across the street. So just some general information about the site. I'll flip back and forth between this and the rendering to give some better context. But in total, it's about a 770,000 square foot building. The Lot 9 building, which you can see here on the left, or Lot 9 buildings, this is the 60,000 foot site here. And so we tried to keep this as contextual as we could with the neighborhood by varying the facade scheme and also stepping down this southern elevation. So this side of the building is 12 stories compared to the side on 207th Street, which is 14 stories, to try to keep it more contextual with the neighborhood to the south. And then this is the Lot 21 building along the east side, which this is sort of the dividing line between the two buildings. So in total, amongst the development, there's going to be 698 units. We'll dive into the MIH application and the specifics of that a little bit later. It was announced in the press in the past couple of weeks. We will be working with the People's Theater to incorporate an 18,000 square foot theater on the westernmost edge of the site here on 206th Street. In addition, we're going to have the 17,000 square feet of neighborhood retail. This is flipping around to the north side of the site along 207th Street here. So this is these spaces can be subdivided as small as 1,500 square feet. We've already had preliminary conversations with the local council member about trying to do some outreach to local businesses to help familiarize them with the building, and really want to try to encourage lease up to local businesses, particularly restaurants, if we can, because we think that they would be a great use for the site. And then lastly, here on Lot 21, so this is just to give it orient, this is 207th Street. This is 9th Avenue here. This is the proposed location of the Fresh Grocer, which is about 16,000 square feet on the ground floor and 5,000 square feet of storage in the lower level. Actually, sorry, one other important thing to note is the sidewalk on 207th Street will be beautifying this with additional street trees as part of our development. So we'll be adding about 25 street trees around the property. And then we've tried to consolidate the pedestrian and the vehicular traffic on 206th Street. So this is the primary pedestrian entrance on 206th Street here. There is an alternate entrance on 207th, which I'll show in the next slide. But this is going to be the primary pedestrian entrance. And this will be the primary vehicular entrance, or sorry, the only vehicular entrance, where we'll have access to about 120 parking spaces on the lower level of the building. So unlike in the past when the supermarket was there and cars could turn in and out of the site off of 207th Street, we've tried to consolidate this now onto 206th Street, so we won't be having vehicles turning in and out of the site from 207. And again, here, high level ground floor plan. This was the 206th Street lobby that I was just pointing to. We do also have a resident entrance on 207th Street. It is all one shared lobby for all of the building entrance. So from either 206th or 207th, you can get into the Lot 21 building or to the two Lot 9 towers. On the ground floor here, you can see this is the fresh supermarket space on the far east side of the site. And then we've got the inline retail along 207th. And then the theater space here, including a double height theater on the southwest corner of the site. And then vehicular entry is right here on the 206th Street side of the site as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lee to talk through the Fresh program.
Thank you, George. The land use action here for your review tonight is a certification pursuant to zoning resolution 6330. And this would certify that the proposed store that's going to be located on the Lot 21 portion of the site meets the requirements for a fresh food store. A little background on the Fresh program. The Fresh program was established in 2009 to provide healthy and affordable food options to communities by lowering the cost of owning, leasing, developing, and renovating supermarket retail space. Here we are proposing to include a fresh food store at the site. Next slide, please. Here, oh, there you go. Here you can see a layout of the proposed fresh food store. On the left, you have the ground floor plan, and on the right side, you have the cellar plan. Again, this will be located entirely on Lot 21, with an entrance provided at the corner of West 207th Street and 9th Avenue, which is that top right corner of the site. In the bottom right corner of the slide, you can see some of the requirements for a fresh food store. And they include minimum floor area allocations for various types of space within the fresh food store. As an example, there's a minimum percentage for the sale of perishable goods and a minimum amount of floor area that must be provided for the sale of fresh produce. I'm not going to run through everything, but as you can see, we exceed all of the minimum requirements and in some cases significantly exceed the minimum requirements under the zoning resolution. Next slide, please. Again, we are seeking a certification of the proposed supermarket to certify that it meets the requirements of a fresh food store, which were outlined on the previous slide. This would also allow for an increase in the residential floor area at the site, which would be an increase in an amount of 1-to-1. So we would get 1 square foot of residential floor area for every square foot of fresh food store. And all of this additional floor area would be located within the Lot 21 portion of the site and is approximately 16,635 square feet. Most importantly, though, although the zoning resolution does allow for an authorization to modify height and setback regulations where a fresh food store is provided, we are not seeking an authorization here, and the site will comply with underlying height and setback regulations. And with that, I will pass it along for a brief discussion on the affordable housing.
Before you go, if I could just point out that you mentioned that the fresh application was for the committee's consideration tonight. We are, reviewing the presentation, but we have not received anything from city planning yet. So we're really, not considering anything prior to a formal application being sent to the community board.
Yes, and we understand that the city is going to send that application very shortly. And under the zoning resolution, you have a 45-day review period. So we're hopeful that by presenting tonight, you will be able to provide a letter within that period so that the city planning can take that into account.
I think I mentioned this last week. It's not clear how that's going to work. And we've had this conversation with city planning and other agencies before. Community boards per the city charter break for the summer. And if it's already June 1st, and if city planning has not yet forwarded the application, which apparently it's been in discussion for some time, we've missed the land use meeting formally. And depending on how long they take, they might miss the executive committee meeting. So, the 45-day period, even if it was today, would take us into the middle of July, which is problematic. So we'll have to see how this plays out.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And I can reach out to city planning and continue that conversation as well.
Okay.
Great. And I'll just add that we shared the submission that we made to city planning, which is the final submission, with you by email. But obviously, that's not the official referral, which, as Lee said, they promised to make this week. So, okay, great. I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
So I'll give it a quick overview of the MIH applications, as well as the just affordability program at the site overall. And then we're obviously happy to take any questions about the project. So both lots here are mapped for mandatory inclusionary housing. Lot 9 and Lot 21 have separate new building applications, and therefore separate MIH applications to each PD. So you can see kind of in these slides, we showed the total unit counts by lot, as well as a total. Really, the total, I imagine, is what sort of is the relevant number. So we are pursuing option 1 here for the mandatory inclusionary housing options, of which there are 4, which requires 25% of the residential floor area to be affordable at or below 60% of area median income. As you'll see on the following slide, we're actually exceeding the requirements of that program, but nonetheless, we have an MIH application, or 2 applications, 1 per lot, to comply with the program. So George, if you just come back for a second to the MIH application, I'll go through that first. So if you look at the chart at the bottom of the slide, which shows the total unit counts for both lots, you can see that 175 apartments of the 698 total on the site, 25%, this is the same for both buildings, will be affordable at an average of 60 of area median income. That means in total, 67 apartments at 40% of area median income, 35 at 60, and 73 at 80, for a total of 175. All of the units in this project, regardless of affordability level, market rate, and all the affordable units, will have stainless steel appliances, washers and dryers in the units, dishwashers, microwaves, high quality finishes, and the terraces that exist in the building, some of which overlook the interior courtyard, some of which overlook the street, are also proportionally distributed among the market rate and the affordable units. So there are 11 MIH units that will have terraces. And if we go to the following slide, just for context, kind of the overall affordability program. So of the 698 apartments in the 2 buildings overall, while the MIH requirement is 25, 40% of the apartments will be affordable at an average of below 60 of area median income. So again, if you look at the chart that's at the very bottom of the slide that shows the total for both lots, you can see that 281 apartments will be affordable at an average of 60. So that means 108 at 40% of area median income, 94 at 60, and 79 at 80. There's an additional 10% at a higher AMI of 120, and the remaining 50% is market rate. The amenities in the building include landscape courtyards on the interior, an attended lobby, as George mentioned, fitness center, co-working space, lounge, and music rehearsal room, game rooms, and the on-site parking, they will be available to all of the residents of the building. Of course, market rate, residents of the market rate and the affordable apartments. If you go to the following slide, George, we were asked to provide some information about just the types of apartments that will be provided in the building. So you can see a summary here of the sizing. This is using the MIH square footage measurement methodology, which is a particular methodology that is just consistent with MIH applications that the community board has received, which have an average, this is across all units, of 411 square feet for studios, 535 for 1 bedrooms, 806 for 2 bedrooms, and 1,051 for 3 bedrooms. And there are sort of a common layout for each unit type that we wanted to show here, just to, again, communicate the types of apartments that'll be provided in the building. So you have a studio layout on the left, which you can see the majority of our studios here will be alcove studios, providing space for sort of a separate bedroom arrangement. Obviously, all affordable bathrooms in every apartment, washers and dryers in every apartment, several closets, a coat closet and an in-room closet. If you look at the 1-bedroom layout that's in the middle of the page, similar, you can see it's a very typical layout, a galley kitchen, walk-in closets in most bedrooms, coat closet, washer and dryer, and then a 2-bedroom, 2-bath that's on the right. The majority of the 2 bedrooms in this building will have 2 bathrooms, which again is proportional. Typically there's a primary bedroom with a bathroom that's accessible from the bedroom and a bathroom that's accessible from the rest of the unit. I will just add that the unit mix of the affordable units, the 40 and 60 and 80 AMI units, is proportional to the unit mix across the building overall, so to the non-affordable units, and that the average unit sizing is between the 2 buildings is also substantially the same between the affordable and the market rate units.
Are there any studio apartments that have real kitchens?
There are different kitchen layouts in the studio lines. Yes, some have galley kitchens, some have the type of kitchen that you see here. Those are the 2 primary types.
I guess in the community, and when I say the community, it's not just Washington Heights, Inwood, but in Manhattan. I mean, there are older buildings that were designed with studio apartments, so this isn't new. And granted, there are some that have sort of the kitchenettes. I think a lot of them were more the rooming house, but there are other studio apartments, and I've seen some really lovely ones in Inwood that it's a studio apartment, but it has a real kitchen. And I'm just wondering if in this development, are there any studio apartments that have, a real kitchen as opposed to your sort of.
Yeah, there are a variety of different layouts. I'm happy to share a few other unit types that have a different kitchen type as well.
Yeah, and I see Tanya's hand up for some time.
Okay. Yes, hi. I just had a couple of questions. If you can answer for the first those first, and then I just had a comment. Can you tell me again, like break down how many what you characterize as affordable units are in this development? How many total apartments are there, and then how many are considered set aside for affordable? I just want to have that question, and then I have a couple others. Mm-hmm.
So there's 698 apartments across the 2 buildings. So in total, 40% of them are affordable at an average of 60% of area median income. So if you look at that bottom chart, the number of the units that average to 60 is 281. That is 108 at 40% of AMI, 94 at 60% of AMI, and 79 at 80% of AMI. There's an additional 10% at 120% of AMI, and then the remaining 50% is market rate.
Okay, and so in terms of can you break this down, because there are people that's listening, this jargon will not make any sense, and I put myself in that as well, because but in terms of the number, when you're saying affordable, what are we talking about in terms of annual income? Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Sure. So the HPD, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, provides guidance about the income limits for each AMI level. So, and they provide it for households of different sizes. So I can cite them for a family of 4, which is but certainly I can go into more detail if you would like to see it for different household size. So for a household of 4, 40% of area median income translates to an annual income of $53,360. This is 2022 numbers that were released, I think maybe just a month or 2 ago. For 60% of AMI, the household income for a family of 4, the limit is $80,040. And for the 80% of AMI level, the income limit for a family of 4 is $106,720. And the rent for all of those income limits is set at the maximum of 30% of that income limit, and obviously varies depending on the apartment size. It's smaller for studios and 1 bedrooms, larger for 2s and 3s.
Okay, and I say this because I'm sure you are aware of the median income in this particular area as not even close, even at your lowest, right? And so I guess when these developments come up, and I understand this is linked to the rezoning and blah, 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 but the concern is that, what's affordable, what's being put here as a result of that is not going to be something that most of the people in the community would be able to utilize, and so that's a concern because, I say that because I don't see this as being affordable, and I don't know exactly how that whom amongst in our community will this attract. I know there'll be people, of course, we have professionals, people who would make that kind of money, but we also have a large number of people who don't, and they work very hard, and but they would not be able to afford that. And so my concern is we have this shiny new toy that people will not get to play with because they won't be able to afford it.
I suspect the Housing and Human Services will have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to express, my concern about it. And can you give me an idea of what the market rate, give me an idea of what that range is in terms of the actual market rate?
Sure. I mean, one thing I want to say is we certainly understand that the label of affordable can be, it can be a controversial term in the sense that the affordability levels are set by the city based on area median incomes for the metropolitan area overall, right? So it doesn't break down by neighborhood, and obviously varies significantly by neighborhood. And that's why it's important to provide a variety of AMI levels that allow that number to come down from the 100% of area median income that's set for the metropolitan area as a whole. What we've tried to do here is increase the proportion of the 40% of area median income units to significantly above the minimums required by MIH to be able to accommodate a greater proportion of people from different demographics.
I see another hand, but I just
what's the market rate? I just have one more. What's the market rate?
Sure. So the market rate rents are, of course, not set because this building will take about 3 years to construct. We'll be leasing, 3 to 4 years from now. Generally speaking, we would expect the studios to be kind of below $2,000 a month, the 1 bedrooms in the low $2,000 a month, the 2 bedrooms in the sort of upper portion of $2,000 a month, and the 3s, of which there are a few, again, upper 2s, lower 3s.
Well, if at 120% of AMI requires a household income of over 100,000, then, and that's considered affordable, then clearly the market rate is going to require income well over 100,000. But I just wanted to say, Ms. Kelman, that it's not that we don't understand that HPD and others use AMI that's for, a sort of New York City statistical area. It's simply, as Bill Clinton said decades ago, it's just math. So if in Community Board 12, or actually in Community Board 9, 10, 11, and 12, the AMI in the area is about 50% of the AMI citywide, then when we're talking about affordability, that means you need to be looking at, a large concentration of units that are at that 50% or below. And I just realized that the numbers have shifted. So if 40% of AMI is now over 50,000, I think the AMI, and I don't know what the current numbers are, but the AMI in CB12 used to be around 52,000. So that's, and that's 50% of the people are above or below that. So that really defines affordability. So, even at 60%, you're pushing it, and 80% is no longer affordable to 50% or more of the population. And 120, even some of the professionals that Tanya's talking about, may not make 106,000. So it's not that affordable is controversial. It's that it's a complete misnomer when the mix of units, it creates such a mismatch with the community within which the project is being built. And it's something that occurs repeatedly. And I was just looking at a project that is now in affordable housing lottery in East Harlem, where once again, the affordability begins at 75,000 and goes up. And once again, that's Community Board 11, your median is about 50,000. So 75,000 is like 50% higher than the local area. So it's not that we don't understand, we understand very well, and we're saying it's a very poor fit. I see 3 hands. I believe it was Jim, Steve, and then Luana.
I have 2 comments. One of them is that I think, unlike another building that we dealt with a while ago, I think it's perfectly appropriate for the fresh designation to be associated with a location that actually had a huge supermarket and had a very absolutely huge produce section. So I think that's reasonable. The only comment I have, and I understand, as this is part of the rezone part of Inwood, and they did what they did, but and again, I won't even go so far as to say your building is unattractive. It's just not bad looking, and you have various touches, as you mentioned, that sort of reflect the heights of other things in the neighborhood. So that's a welcoming thing too. But in terms of most buildings around here, I have never seen, I don't think there is another building in our district that has the visual bulk that this does, other than maybe the Presbyterian Hospital and all that. It's just a huge building. And again, I think you've done a nice job with it, and again, it is what it is, in that you're doing exactly what the city decided to do with this rezoning. But from my point of view, and as you can tell, I've been around for a while, this thing is just shocking. Again, I may get over the shock, and it may be an absolutely delightful place to live. But I thought I would throw in that comment as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that is an interesting point that Jim makes, because this site is within spitting distance of Dyckman houses. And I think Dyckman houses is about 14-story buildings. So it's not that this is tremendously taller than buildings in the area, but in terms of density, Dyckman doesn't come across visually nearly as dense. There's a lot more open space, and this particular, I'm sure there are courtyards somewhere, but it doesn't have any sense of, open space at all. Steve?
I share the concerns about the density and the affordability. And I think when we consider the bulk of the site, what we also have to consider, which George didn't mention, is that there are 2 other sites on the other side of 207th Street that are to be developed, and which are also going to be I think, fairly large buildings. And so that whole little section next to the University Heights Bridge is going to get a heck of a lot of development in the very near future, and there's going to be an influx of thousands of additional people. So I have two questions. One is, will the tenants be provided with rent stabilized leases?
So the building will conform with the rent stabilization requirements in the 421A program or the Affordable New York program, which which requires, as I understand it, rent stabilization for all apartments below a certain rent level.
So does that cover the 40% in the so-called affordable category?
Yes, certainly.
All of those people will have rent stabilized leases and will have some measure of protection for maybe for how long a period of time?
The mandatory inclusionary housing units, the 175 units that fall under the program, are permanently affordable. The remaining 15% to get to that 40% total, I believe the regulatory agreement period is 35 years. So that's the duration. That's the duration of that. And we can give you more detail about, I believe, at the end of that 35 years, it's the tenants living in those apartments also have protection. Obviously, the rent stabilization does not cease for those residents at the end of the regulatory period.
I'm sorry, what was that last sentence? It doesn't have, those tenants will have what?
At the end of that 35-year regulatory agreement period for the units that are affordable but not inclusionary housing units, the rent stabilization protections for the residents that are living in those apartments at the end of the period don't cease, so they remain.
They would, you're saying they would continue. Okay, and my other question is, I think maybe it was George or someone said earlier that the primary residential and vehicular entrances would be on 206th Street, but there are 3 or more buildings, right? Or so is there one entrance for all 3 of these buildings?
Sure, maybe George, if we go back to that site plan, would be the easiest way to answer.
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now.
And when you go to that plan, could you also point out again where the theater will be located?
Yep.
Sure.
So this is the common residential lobby. So again, this is the lot 21 building. This sort of above here is sort of the lot 9 building. So you can say lot 21 building, and then this is the lot 9 building on this side. So this here, kind of looking in here, is looking into this lobby from 206th. So from either, you can enter the residential lobby from either 206th, or you can enter from 207th. And then from here, you can enter the lot 21 building, or you can enter either of the elevator banks to get up to the lot 9 building. The theater entrance will be on the southwest side of the site on 206th Street, right around here. This is sort of the extent of their storefronts here.
So closer to 10th Avenue.
Correct, yes.
That's correct. And I'll just add that, I mean, this rendering is obviously does not do justice to what their facade will look like. They're working with a separate architecture team to design their storefront and their canopy, and they will have a very visible presence on West 206.
So will most of the theater be underground?
So it'll be entered into on grade here. So they'll have a pretty expansive lobby, ADA accessible.
Well, this looks like the residential entrance, no?
No, so right here, again, this is the west side along.
You have to see the person.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you see the screen, the layout?
Yes.
Okay. This here, so basically the theater, to create the double height space, because they needed 20+ foot high ceilings, the theater actually starts in the lower level, but then extends up to the ceiling of the first floor. So this is a big cutout here where there's like a 5,000 square foot, the actual theater space. The rest of it will be rehearsal rooms, back of house offices, things like that. That's largely concentrated on the first floor, but they also have some space in the lower level as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure they, they recently just got designated, so they're beginning, I think, their outreach program, and we don't want to steal their thunder with our less than exciting presentation, but they're working on the design of their space now.
So the residential entrance is to the right of that?
Steve, the residential entrance is off to the right that goes through the entire site, and the theater entrance is off to the left.
Yep. Yeah, if you can see where my mouse is pointing, sorry if it's hard to see. But this is residential, this is all theater frontage.
All right, very good.
Luana.
Hello, good evening. I have two questions. Who owns Fresh? And with this whole, I'm a lifelong a resident of Inwood. I went to school here, library card, First Communion. I did it. This is my community. So my concern is when these residential units go, I'm assuming it's going to be via lottery, like most affordable housing units happen, one. And are they going to be exclusively done to CB12 community members? Meaning, is the lottery going to be open to the entire city of New York? Or are you making a pledge that those affordable units, if we do approve this project, would go exclusively to residents of Inwood? And I guess as a third question, what is the percentage that will go to municipal workers, city workers, civil servants? If you have that data, I will really appreciate it.
Sure, I can take that question first, Lee, and then you'll take the Fresh one. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. So as you know, since obviously you're familiar with how the lottery process works, each BD sets the rules for the preferences that exist in that lottery process. So they have a longstanding policy of a 50% preference for community board members. That we would not have the discretion to, increase or reduce. And there are additional preferences, as you said, for municipal workers and certain other groups that I cannot recite off the top of my head, but I will forward them to the to Wayne to share the exact information that's in HPD's policy, guidelines today.
And then answering your question about Fresh. Fresh is not a grocery store brand. It's just a designation. And so when a supermarket is a Fresh store, it just means that it meets the requirements that are set out in the zoning resolution. So it can be operated by any grocer. And we've actually, as part of our application, we've submitted an executed LOI for operation of the grocery store. Yep. And I believe, Catherine, you can correct me, I believe it is by the current operator of this, or the operator of the former store on the site?
Yeah, that is correct.
Right.
Okay.
And just for clarity for new committee of board members, Fresh is a Department of City Planning program under which supermarkets can be built either in new or in existing buildings, provided they allocate a certain amount of square footage to fresh fruit and vegetables and maintain that for, I guess, the life of the operation.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. I was actually confusing it with the food bazaar in the Bronx. I apologize for that.
No, not a problem at all. OC?
Yeah, I have a quick question that I don't know if, well, I'm just going to ask. How are you running the heating system in the building? Are you electrifying the building? Is it going to be like, I'm sorry?
Yes, that's a good question. I'm happy to answer that one. So the heating and cooling in the building will be done by electric heat. So electric heat pumps in every apartment. And certainly, we seek to comply with the new local law 97. The building will be pursuing a LEED certification as well. The stoves in the residential apartments will also be electric. So the only gas usage in the building will be for domestic hot water.
Oh, really? Okay. So not, okay, got it. Thanks.
Sure.
Daniel.
Hey, so my question is, how are you guys or the developers going to combat traffic around that area? The rendering looks nice, but the rendering does not really reflect on how that part of the neighborhood is. Fridays, it's really hard to be driving down 207th Street. That little back street on, I think, 9th Avenue, it's like always a mess with the beer wholesale there. And I think like 2 blocks down, there's like a school that's still there, and they closed off one of the streets. Just even 207 and Broadway, that's like a really not an easy street to drive through, and especially throughout the middle of the day. And I would just imagine it's going to be even more hectic with construction trucks passing by, cement trucks, long trucks. I don't know. I just want to know how are you guys going to combat that?
Sure. I mean, I would say certainly the bulk of the effort for addressing, the traffic issues on West 207th, would have to be pursued in discussions with DOT, within the confines of the site itself. We place the garage entrance for the parking spaces that are required by zoning here on West 206th Street, so that you don't have turnoffs into the site from West 207th. We expect that, while we're providing the parking spaces that are required by zoning, we expect the vast majority of the residents to use transit, because the site has the 1 train stop, obviously at the corner of the block, as well as the 8 train nearby and the Metro North stop across the bridge. So I think we expect certainly a lot of pedestrian traffic. Is with respect to car traffic, we're not performing improvements in the street, but we certainly understand, we're well aware of the traffic issues that, that exist in the neighborhood, and are happy to be part of any discussions with the DOT about what can be done there. During construction, we will also, we've started the process now in preparation of working with DOT to locate the routes and sort of logistics entry points into the sites in a way that that minimizes impacts. Although, of course, as you mentioned, there will be traffic for the construction process during the duration of the work that will come to the site. Hopefully, to some extent, it will be offset by the fact that the site will not be any longer used as a parking lot, which experienced a lot of traffic in its former use.
Well, Daniel raised a good point, and it also relates to something that Steve said, and I see Sally's hand, but I just want to point out that the project requires action by 2 different committees. The fresh application is something that is a land use action when we get it, and the MIH is really Housing and Human Services. But as Daniel pointed out, driving around the area is a mess. And as Steve pointed out, this is one of several new developments that will be, big and bulky, and will add to that. So it strikes me that, if you want to be a good corporate citizen, that you'd want to talk to our Traffic and Transportation Committee, because we know from the inward rezoning that the level of, service as measured in, environmental impact statement is fairly low in the area, and this is just going to get worse. And I would think that you'd want to be proactive and speak with the Traffic and Transportation Committee. I believe Jim Berlin, who's on land use, is also on that committee, to see what that committee is talking about, and to see how you and the community board can approach DOT to explore improvements and traffic mitigation issues, as opposed to just say, well, it's off-site and it doesn't concern me.
And we're happy to do that.
Yeah, and I know the rezoning as well included significant funding for improving traffic, particularly in this area.
It really didn't propose much, though, and that's the problem. It recognized in the environmental impact statement that even without new development, the traffic situation is miserable. And it didn't really propose, as I recall, much by way of actions the city committed to take to mitigate that?
Yeah, we're certainly happy to speak with the transportation committee or the traffic committee about it.
Sally?
Yes, following up on Luana's question about community preference, this building is 3 years away, which means there is zero guarantee that community preference will survive legal challenges. So in fact, we don't know what percentage of units will be reserved or whatever for community residents. And hasn't that already been reduced by the 15% for homeless by HPD regulation?
There is a formerly homeless set aside. I'm not sure how it interacts with a community board preference, to be honest, but we can find out and confirm.
Okay, and also just to confirm that there is no guarantee today the community preference will survive in 3 years.
But we don't control that, Sally.
No, I know, but just stating the answer that was given made it seem like, yes, 50% of these units will be reserved. We don't know that today. We won't know that for 3 years. I just want that on the record.
Steve, is that an old hand? New hand?
No, it's a new one. Allegra LeGrand raises an interesting question in the Q&A. The MTA train yards were recently found to be a fire hazard because of insufficient water pressure. I'm wondering whether the developers for this site are talking to DEP to make sure that you have sufficient water pressure for all of these apartments.
We have submitted a site connection application to DEP, so we expect to be approved for water connection. They've not raised that issue as it would affect our block. So at least DEP has not raised it.
But maybe you should ask them about it because it's, as George pointed out, right on the other side of 207th Street.
Okay, that's good to know.
Along the line,
I would be interested in knowing what DEP tells you.
along the lines of infrastructure questions, I mean, I think OC was happy to hear about the electrification, but my question is, what is the capacity of the Con Ed grid in that area? And how much are they going to make you improve it, and where will those improvements occur? Because typically the grid is not sufficient to carry, nearly 700 units of, all electric building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their grid isn't enough to do what it does now.
We've begun engaging with Con Ed. They have not requested upgrades to infrastructure to provide electrical service to the property. As is typical, we have to, there has to be a vault constructed for the connection into the building. But there's no sort of larger infrastructure upgrade that they've requested from us, at least to date.
But I would think that's a question that you want to get clarity on, because the existing buildings, when we've looked at, gas or electrical upgrades, have typically required, some amount of work. And Con Ed, although it is supposed to be maintaining the grid, is always pushing those costs onto the buildings. I would suspect with a brand new building where you're proposing to do all of this, infrastructure via electricity, that the existing infrastructure was not designed for that.
So we'll get a more detailed answer on what the requirements are, and we'll share that with the committee.
Yes, Jim?
I just wanted to reinforce your point. The issue is not your electrical infrastructure. The issue is the electrical infrastructure that you expect to be feeding power into your building. Now, many years ago, I forget the exact timing, Washington Heights, Inwood, and a little bit of Riverdale, just north of here, we had our own private blackout. The rest of the world had power, north of us, south of us, everywhere. But our substation almost caught fire. And now we have a second substation. They're both on Academy Street by the water. And so there's power and these substations, bring power from transmission lines into the local grid. So there's power around, but whether there's enough actual, electrical infrastructure, basically it's called the transmission system, in that area. I mean, all that used to be there was a supermarket. Now, a supermarket does use a lot of power. It's got a lot of lights and refrigerator, but compared to this very large structure of yours, it's nothing. And again, as several people have pointed out, you basically can't get a gas hookup anymore for cooking and all that kind of stuff. So this all has to be electric. But that will, and not to mention that all the heating and cooling will be electric too. So this building will have a much higher electric load than per apartment than all its neighbors. So it'd be rather, and as I see it, Con Ed likes to shift costs to other people. So they originally wanted millions of dollars to bring a gas pipe to my street, and eventually they paid for it, and they're supposed to pay for it. And their shareholders are supposed to pay for all this equipment upgrade, but they've got to do it, and it'd be a shame, and hopefully it won't happen that you build this building and the lights won't go on. So, and I would, knowing Con Ed, start rattling their cage yesterday. Thank you.
Right. No, I certainly appreciate that. I mean, we have been engaging with Con Ed. Certainly those approvals from the different utilities are required to be able to, obtain building permits and move forward with construction. They have to determine that there is sufficient infrastructure to support the building. So we will, we'll talk to our construction team about where those discussions with Con Ed stand so we can update the group.
Tanya? Tanya?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. My internet is doing crazy things. For me, I don't want to sock up broken record, and I appreciate all the other conversations about all the other things, but I just can't with this. I knew it was going to happen once the inward rezoning went through, and that these developments were going to start popping up. I just look at 207 and some other areas looking like 116th Street in Harlem, unrecognizable, in the people who can't even afford to live there. I just don't, I just see that happening, and I just don't see it. And HPD, as much as they're setting these whatever rates or whatever, they're responsible for a lot of homelessness themselves because of the lack of understanding, or at least in their policies, understanding of money and how much and what is going out when people make income. They may say it's 30%, but actually it's 30% before taxes. It's 30% before other expenses. And so what people end up paying with 30% ends up being 60% going to rent, because they're not taking into account all of the other expenses that people have. So I just personally, I can't see it. And I just don't feel like these sort of developments are going to be for people of certain incomes. And it's not going to benefit the community as a whole, of people that are here now, which is a very diverse group of people, but the people that are here now, I just don't see it, especially with the lack of pay equity that goes on. Listen, I have 3 advanced degrees, and people still try to offer me $50,000 a year as I laugh in their face. Okay, so I'm just telling you, the right of pay inequity that goes on is what we're talking about. So it's great if pay inequity didn't exist, and in different social identity groups were not impacted by it overwhelmingly, and that they could afford to pay all of that money and to be able to live. But that's just not what's happening. And again, I see 116th Street in 10 years. So I can't. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Steve?
Is it, how many additional apartments will you be able to build as a result of the fresh designation?
The residential floor area bonus is roughly 16,000 square feet. I think the number of apartments that correlates to is 20 something, 24, I believe.
And I think Lee Whitman said earlier that the operator of the supermarket is expected to be the last supermarket operator who was on the site. Am I correct? Was that an associated? It wasn't Pathmark.
Pathmark.
It was Pathmark.
It was, and then it was an associated in the interim for about 3 years. And yeah, we submitted an LOI with that operator as part of the fresh application, and have been in discussion with him to reopen a new store at the site.
The associated operator, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You've mentioned for the developer the 421A benefits. And what is the dollar value of that? And is that program still around? I mean, you haven't started construction yet, so I mean, have you been able to grandfather that, or does that program even still exist for this project?
We expect to be vested under the current iteration of it, yes.
But how does that work? I mean, did the program expire yesterday?
No, it has not expired yet. It will. The requirements of the program are that initial foundation work begin prior to June 15th. And that's what requires. That's what's required in order to be vested under the current iteration of it. Obviously we don't know what will happen in the legislature, but if it lapses, projects starting construction after that date won't be able to rely on the program.
And what's the estimated value of the 421A for this project?
I don't know the answer to that. It's a property tax abatement over the period of years that I can describe, if it's helpful, as sort of the methodology for how the tax abatement works, but I'm not sure of the total value.
Yeah, we've dealt with 421A applications in the past. I'm just curious as to, I mean, the estimated value. It must be in someone's pro forma.
Well, to be honest, we underwrite the property taxes, assuming the abatement. We don't, so I don't know off the top of my head the value of the abatement itself. It certainly could be calculated, with various assumptions over the life of it.
Okay. So it is pushing 10 o'clock. We do have 4 hands attendees. As I mentioned, you really do need to make sure you get to the Housing and Human Services, and I would strongly recommend that you get to Traffic and Transportation. So I'm just going to see if this is going to work for me. What is happening here? From Senator Jackson's office, are you able to speak?
That's Dario.
I understand. I used to be able to click on this and say unmute, and now that seems to have disappeared.
He's able to speak. Everybody's able to speak.
Okay, so fine.
What to do is unmute themselves.
So the representative, I was just going down the list. The representative from Senator Jackson's office. Unmute yourself and.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dario Quinsack. I work for Senator Jackson's office. Can you confirm that the rents that were provided to the state for bonding purposes are the ones that will be used in 3 years?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, no worries. Where are the amounts, the rents, and that for the market, the different AMIs that were provided to the state for bonding purposes, the ones that will actually be used during the actual marketing at the time that it will be open?
So at the time that the bonds are issued by HFA for the project, there will be a regulatory agreement recorded against the entire site that will require the site to rent, these numbers of units at the specific AMI level.
Correct.
that are outlined.
I read the documents, obviously,
Right.
which is why I'm asking if those numbers will be the ones that will be actually taking place at the time that the rentals are open to the public.
I see. So my understanding of how HFA policy, the regulatory agreements work is that they set the AMI level. They don't set the specific rent at the time of closing. So they set the AMI level, meaning X units at 40, X units at 60 and such.
Okay, just a second. I apologize. Speak. Just a second.
Thank you.
We were given amounts specific based on the size of the apartment, the market or AMI, and the number of units. Those were the numbers that were provided to us because the elected official, the state senator and the state assemblyman representing the area have to indirectly sign off on the bonding on behalf of the state. And we were given specific numbers, and we agreed to the bond. The senator agreed to the bonding based on those numbers. So we would want to make sure that those numbers, the numbers that will actually take place.
Right. No, I understand your question. I think, and we can confirm with HFA, but my understanding is that the regulatory agreement will set the AMI level. So if, between now and the completion of the project, HUD revises, what is the household income limit for example, the 40% of area median income level, that will set the rent at the time that the lease up begins.
But wouldn't that change the terms under which the elected officials approved the bond issue?
That's my understanding of how the regulatory agreements work. And you can certainly speak with HFA to confirm. I just know that typically they don't set the specific rent because those rents may be revised annually as the AMI levels can go up or down. I'm sorry, the household income limits can go up or down, but the specific AMI level that's set for a certain number of units cannot change once the bonds are issued.
Yeah, it would be wonderful if Senator Jackson's office could share with Community Board 12 the numbers, the income levels, the rents that the senator and the assembly rep agree to. I'm sure our Housing and Human Services Committee will be very interested in that information.
We will ask for authorization from legal counsel, but we're happy to provide that if they don't oppose.
Okay. Thank you. Dave Tom? Dave?
Oh, there we go. I was just waiting for the unmute. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, technical issues. So to be clear, the only reason that this is before the committee tonight is for the fresh application, as you summarized a moment ago, correct? Because everything in this project is as of right.
Well, the MIH application would go before the Housing and Human Services Committee.
Yeah, yes, but for this committee, it's relevant to the fresh application.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would commend the team for finding a way to make use of the fresh application in the way I think the program was intended, where, as Jim pointed out, there was a supermarket on the site, and the added floor area is not being used to circumvent the contextual zoning that was applied to the site in the inward rezoning. So that's really positive to see. I was curious what the ultimate FAR was of the development with the fresh application modification in mind. What is the ultimate FAR? And that gets to your point, Wayne, about how Dykeman House is a similar height, but has an FAR of around 3.5. Most of Inwood is FAR of 4 or 5. We know this is going to be something like 8, I think, for the rezoning. But what is the ultimate FAR for this development?
If you give me 2 minutes, I will look it up and share the answer.
Yeah, I'm doing the math right now. Give me just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, just because it's relevant for us as we follow. A lot of us were very involved with the rezoning and gave tremendous input to the city. 98% of which was ignored, but nonetheless, we tried very hard to, understand where the density would be going and little models we made 3 years ago are now turning out exactly as assumed, which is, the envelopes are filling up per the massing that's allowed by the rezoning. So it's helpful for us to understand those FARs as they, come into these different projects.
The overall square footage of the two lots combined is what?
Is 79,936. And I just did the math. The fresh store would increase the overall FAR by 0.2 FAR. And again, that would be
so that gives you an FAR
for a one-to-one bonus.
But that gives you an FAR of what for the project?
Yeah, it's really by lot, right, Lee? So lot 9 has a different FAR as of right than lot 21. So I think we should just.
Unless you're doing a zoning merge, I don't know how you're handling the lots when it comes to zoning.
I mean, let's not overcomplicate it. What's the if there are two lots, what's the FAR for A and B?
So the overall would be 7.7. But again, the fresh would only be located on lot 21, which is the Avenue lot.
We get that.
Great, thank you.
Allegra.
Hello. Hi, thanks, Wayne. My question is also about the fresh application. I guess I don't, well, for one, I think that we've had 3 hours of community board meeting without ever stating that fresh is an acronym. And fresh means food retail expansion to support the health program. And maybe that should be stated anytime we use acronyms, we should just go ahead and put the acronym on the page and spell it out like in words when we speak. But I thought the purpose of the fresh program was to bring fresh fruit and vegetables into places that didn't have it before. And while it's true that there was a supermarket there, I still do my shopping at Antiana, which is next door. Best poblanos and plum tomatoes in the neighborhood, cheapest, best price. It's still going to be there, presumably, unless they get driven out of business. Gigante, 2 blocks south of there. Another, I mean, they don't call it that because it's not like funny, like Little John. No. It is actually a huge supermarket. It's like 2 blocks south of there. I don't fully understand why a special application, a special additional 16,000 square feet on a 79,000 square foot lot. She said like 0.2%, but I don't know, 16 divided by 79 seems like it's more like 20%, not 0.2. Anyway, I don't understand why you get a fresh permission in a place that we just rezoned. Like the ink's scarcely dried in the last 2 years, where they're asking for an additional story on the building they're putting in there. We've already had the rezoning. There's already specific rezoning for residential units, for commercial units. The commercial density is somewhat greater. I don't understand why fresh should come in and co-opt, which was a 5-year process in figuring out the inward rezoning. So I'd like that explained, and pretty much any explanation of every acronym LOI. I presume that means letter of intent. I mean, come on, like, do we need to use acronyms? I mean, I can confuse
we're
with
not
acronyms, but
going
really,
to go through
be
a
professional.
list of acronyms this evening. But I think if the committee would.
It need not be a list. However, you can put an
if-
acronym on the page and speak it out loud faster than you can say the acronym. It's so easy.
And this is not the community board's presentation, but I'm sure the development team was happy to address that. Oh, I will point out for everyone present that this is not the first time Community Board 12 has dealt with either a fresh application or specifically the fresh program.
Yes.
So, yes.
I'm sorry, Wayne.
So
Point
yes,
of fact,
yes,
the fresh program for the Sherman Plaza place, that was outside the inward rezoning. What we're talking about now is inside the inward rezoning area. We've already thought about it. We've already had like
Allegra,
and 16 by 17.9 is not 0.2.
Allegra, the point is the community board has dealt with the fresh program from its inception. So if anyone is confused of what fresh means, we can certainly clarify that. We can certainly put information on our website to clarify that.
I hear what you're saying, and yet it's so easy. But truly, there's not a lack. There's not a lack of fresh produce. There's not a lack of fresh produce. My question is, why is there fresh produce right next door?
Let's deal with that question and not belabor the point of acronyms.
I agree. And let me just reiterate then my point that Gigante and Antiana spit in distance.
Yes.
Not like Dyckman houses
the committee like
half a
to
mile.
respond to that? Would the development team like to respond to the rationale for fresh in this location?
Yes, so a number of areas throughout the city were identified as lacking in access to fresh or to grocery stores, which would supply fresh produce and other fresh foods. This was one of those areas. And in particular, there was an amendment to the Fresh program in late 2021. And as a part of that amendment, it required a study of oversaturation. And our project, and in connection with that, city planning has provided a map which shows that there are no fresh food stores within a half mile of our project.
That's not a factual check. Wayne, seriously, just look up right now on Google Maps, Antiana.
If we do not stop interrupting, I will have to end the meeting. This is out of order and you know it. So there are 2 points on the floor. One point is, and we've brought this up before, and we've asked city planning to address it. The Fresh program does not look at supermarkets that are built or exist that were not built under the Fresh program, and that is a problem. And those of you who are on the call now, who were on prior meetings, know that we've raised this. But the second point is, and we've discussed this before as well, it is factually inaccurate that the Fresh program was created to provide supermarkets in areas where there is a food desert. If you go back to the foundation of the project and the program, it dealt with certain health indicators that related to areas where people do not have access to buying fresh fruit and vegetables, and what they're buying is over-processed food, fats, and sugar. And that's why the floor plate is regulated in terms of what percentage of the supermarket must carry fresh fruit and vegetable. So when we talk about, and we've done it both committee members and members of the public, when we say that the program was created basically to address food deserts, that is factually incorrect. Now, whether or not it is needed or not is another point, but let's not continue to make loud statements about things that are not factually correct. Peter Green.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had just one big question here. Maybe George is better placed to answer it since Catherine, I guess, isn't familiar with the finances of the project, but what's your ROI on this? What's your profit margin? And is this thing viable without the tax breaks that you're getting? Just, lay it out for me straightforwardly the way you would if I were one of your investors who said, hey, I've got a 1031 exchange and I want to get into this.
Yeah, I mean, we don't divulge publicly confidential information about our projects.
But you're asking us to give up, and the community board and the city of New York and us citizens to give up our tax dollars to Taconic partners and your investors.
No, we're here reviewing the Fresh application, not as
right. But the Fresh application gives you right. But the Fresh application and the other pieces of this,
Peter, the 421A program, which is what I asked about, that is the real estate tax abatement, not the Fresh program.
I understand, but
Wayne,
Wayne,
my point is,
Can I ask my question? I'm very
421
familiar with all of this.
Good.
I'm
So
curious-
Peter, when you attend the Housing and Human Services Committee, where they will discuss the MIH and the 421A, because that is not going to come before land use, you can have a more detailed discussion of
Absolutely. but
421A program.
George, I'm sorry we're having this side discussion. My question was just very simply, Fresh gives you a certain number, several thousand, 16,000 or something more square feet to this project, right? That's obviously money. Every square foot is a certain number of dollars. Is your project viable without getting those extra square feet and the profit that would come from them over the long term?
Yeah, again, we're not sharing confidential information.
But you're asking us to approve the Fresh, which gives you this.
Peter, the back and forth is not necessary. And as I already said,
Fine.
at this meeting, since the community board does not have an application before it from the Department of City Planning, we are not approving anything.
It's just an informational question, but thank you very much, George and Catherine.
Completely get that. Graham.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just quick question. With regards to the, this is actually more a question for the board, if you know. With regards to the Fresh program operators, the supermarkets that can go in there, could say a high-end market go in there like Whole Foods, are they eligible?
That's actually not a question for the board. That's more of a question for city planning. I don't think the program, limits or controls the operators. It limits and controls the percentage of floor area that must be allocated to certain uses.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
That's our understanding also.
Bernadette? Bernadette?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, I'm speaking for Bernadette.
Okay, so you're not Bernadette. What's your name?
My name is Cliff.
Hi, Cliff.
Hi, Wayne. My question is very simple. Will Taconic have anything constructed by June 15th to be eligible for 421A?
Yes, we expect to be able to begin the initial foundation work that's required to be able to vest under it. Yeah.
But I assume it's going to be very minimal amount of work between now and, basically 2 weeks from now. So it's.
Yeah, that's correct. Just the beginning.
Yeah, it seems a bit much. Anyway, so it's.
What a joke.
Yeah, it's 10:15.
What a joke.
We've had
It's
a
slab of concrete in the ground. Okay.
I completely understand that it's, as I said, it's, if today is the 1st and they have to have work by the 15th, there isn't much that's going to be done. That's an issue.
That's an issue, he said.
That's an issue. That's an understatement. But this is something that if our state senator rep is still on the line, I mean, it's a question of how the city, in fact, monitors, these programs, and it's perhaps something that requires some further discussion. I'm going to, thank the development
Put a
team.
fucking slab of concrete. Okay, now.
Let's keep it.
Well, Wayne, do we have a copy of this presentation?
I'm going to ask the 3 presentations that were made this evening to forward them to us so that we have them.
And please forward this last one to the members.
Well, Steve, when I get it, and as you're well aware, when I get materials, I forward it to the committee. Sometimes the committee even reads them. But I will, thank the development team for tonight's presentation. Have you been able to coordinate with Ebenezer Smith, and are you able to be on the agenda for Housing and Human Services this month?
I believe we reached out to see if we could join tomorrow, and I don't think we heard back.
Yeah, I think we reached out several times since Friday and told them we were available to join, but haven't heard back.
Okay, well, as I said, well, it's a different committee, different chair. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the review and the questions.
You're very welcome. Is there old business? Is there new business?
Wayne,
Yes?
I sent you an email. I don't know if you saw it, but Peter I said there was an item that he was requesting to be on the agenda. I don't know if you want him to.
An item he is requesting to be on the agenda?
He said that he was supposed to give a presentation. Peter can speak from, I guess you can ask Peter.
I'm not familiar with, there were 3 presentations that are on the agenda. So there isn't another presentation that was supposed to be made this evening.
Wayne, may I speak for a moment?
Sure.
When we emailed, you asked me to be on this call and invite others about the rezoning, the contextual rezoning, and to update the committee on the 857th Street. I wrote to Paula and Ebenezer 2 or 3 times to ask to be on the agenda and never got a response.
Right.
I think I CC'd you on those emails.
I don't really.
So can I take 2 minutes to update you?
You can certainly take 2 minutes. I will point out, as I did at the beginning of the meeting, that the purpose of the July training session is in fact to deal with sort of the background, the substance, sort of the, bringing people up to speed with the language of planning and zoning, which so many refer to as jargon, but we need to understand what it is city planning does. So everyone who's been involved with, the West 158th Street and 857 and talking about, the R8, I really encourage them to make sure they attend the July session as well.
If you could, on that score, which is not what I want to talk about, if you could send me a short email in plain English that I can share with our mailing list, which is a lot of people who would be
I would advise the mailing list to reach out to the community board office to make sure they are on the community board's e-blast list, because the community board, Paola, Ebenezer, Chanel will be e-blasting information and the link for that. I will not be doing it. So that.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for an explanation in English because Paola and Ebenezer don't. I'm just pointing out to you, they don't put people on the mailing list and they don't respond to emails, so it's difficult.
There will be a notice. There will be a notice drafted by yours truly.
That's fine.
That will go to the office, and the office will e-blast that. And
I'll ask them for a copy so we can make sure more people know about it. But let me get to you very briefly on 857 Riverside, the abolitionist house. This is pretty important. We have a deadline of July 4th, which probably means July 5th for the court, for the resident of the house to rescind the sale to the developers. The only problem is that we need more political support to make this happen. Our interlocutor had been the lieutenant governor, but since he disappeared from the political scene, we need more push. When I spoke with our state representatives, Al Taylor's office requested that the community board pass a resolution asking him to be active and to asking Assemblyman Al Taylor to be a force behind this. And he didn't seem to want to move forward without that resolution, according to his staff. Is that something that we could do? The project hangs by this thread. If State Parks doesn't have a political message to buy the house.
The State Parks, and I've had some conversations with the assemblyman and others. The community board can pass a resolution on any number of things, but we need to know what we're talking about. So we're certainly not going to and can't pass anything this evening.
I wasn't asking that. I was asking, my question was really simple.
Let me finish.
But please don't misconstrue my question.
We would need to have, if it's the assemblyman, the senator, community stakeholders, we would need to have a conversation with all of them present so that everyone understands what's going on and who's on what page, and the community board, what is the community board being asked to do?
Right. Is it possible, given this July 4th deadline, given that today is June 1st, is that something that can be done before the next meeting of this committee?
There is, the next meeting of this committee, as I mentioned, will be in September.
Okay.
So the interested parties.
Yeah. How do we make this happen?
The interested parties should not wait till the last minute. They probably need to reach out to the board chair directly and soon.
Okay.
And when I say the interested parties, if the senator's office, and I see that they are still, if the senator's rep is still here and the Assemblyman's rep is not here, but I mean, reach out to them. And for that matter, the borough president, we need to have them all, you know, on a call or meeting to understand what's what.
Yes.
Who is being asked to that, and you know, they need to reach out to the board chair soon.
Right. That's great. So I will have them directly connect with the board chair and his office to do that then. Is that what I should do?
They should connect with the board chair, yes.
Okay. The other thing on that same topic is that the developers have just acquired the ZD1 approval. In other words, the zoning diagram that allows them to build the 13-story tower there. It's not clear how or when that would go ahead, but it's a dangerous step forward. And I wanted you to be aware of that, and the rest of the committee to be aware that these things are moving forward despite, you know, efforts to slow them down and to rescind the sale of the property, which was quite probably a deed theft.
Yeah, but then again, the community board doesn't have any firsthand information on the private sale between the former owner and the new owner, and whether it's rescinded or not.
Right. So what information would you like?
We're not party to that, is the point.
It's public information now.
Yeah, but my point is the community board is not party to the private transactions. Now, we understand what the argument is, but it's not what information we need. You know, we're not party to that transaction.
No, you're not a party. I'm not a party, but it affects the community. So the question is, if
Peter, if you're having conversations with the elected officials about the sale, I'm not an attorney. There's nothing that I can add relative to.
I'm not asking you to. Sorry. Wait. I'm trying to inform the community board.
No,
what is going on there, and make
Peter,
aware.
We appreciate that, and we've had detailed conversations about 857 before, and we know that there is an ongoing issue about the nature of that sale. But you know, the community board is not a party to that transaction.
Correct, but I moved on from that. That was the last previous conversation.
Remember, you said 2 minutes.
If I could just speak, I'm talking about the ZD1 has now been filed.
Yeah, yes, we
okay,
got that as well.
Right, which means that part of what the ZD1 did was they went back and used the wide street definition, and the fact that this piece of land still has not been transferred from DOT to Parks.
And it's not going to happen, yes.
Okay, does the community board want to weigh in further on that issue of the wide street with a 20-foot cliff in the middle of it?
But Peter, the
transfer?
community board helped to draft, and I believe you know this, the community board helped to draft the letter that Gail Brewer and a number of other elected officials signed and sent to the building department, and I believe city planning and DOT on this very issue. And it was a very detailed letter.
Correct. But since we have a new administration and since things have progressed, is there any desire among not just Wayne, but the rest of the members of this committee or of the board to become further involved, to send an additional letter saying, hey, please, this still matters. Could you take a look at it?
I think that would be a great conversation to have with the current borough president, who is very familiar with the issue because he was the council person at the time. And I believe he also is one of the parties who signed the letter. So once again, it's not whether or not the community board is interested. The community board has been interested and active and involved for more than a year. The parties that have the ability to be at the table and, push the city agencies are our elected officials. And so, and we have continued to raise the issues,
Great.
particularly to the area down here and in general, with Carmen De La Rosa, who, if you recall, sat through the entire land use committee meeting a few months ago, and we appreciate that. And, we've talked to Mark Levine about this a couple of times, and we've invited Councilman Abreu to attend on a few occasions. So,
Great.
it's not that. So, but with that, Steve, you're raising your hand again.
Well, thanks very much, Wayne. I will make sure that the interested parties reach out to the CB12 chair.
Absolutely.
Well, Peter, before you go,
Yeah.
Did the community board previously send a letter to the buildings department about 857?
There were, I believe, I don't know if there was a letter.
Steve,
I never saw it.
There was in fact a letter that the board chair also signed in addition to Gail and others, and I believe the land use committee received a copy of that, and the whole issue of whether it was a narrow street or wide street and the varying, definitions based on which city agency you were talking to.
Okay, all right. So,
yes.
So it didn't come directly from the board. We were one of the signatories.
I believe the board recommended the letter be sent, and the board helped to draft the letter, and I believe the board authorized the board chair to sign as well.
Okay, but it went on someone else's letterhead. So whoever that party was, we should ask them if they would send.
That's what I just said. It was from Gail Brewer, as the borough president. So it would be appropriate to Mark and ask Mark as the current borough president to follow up.
But let me just say that if no elected official, for whatever reason, chooses to send such a letter, I would have no problem with asking our board chair to do it separately.
We can certainly do that.
Since that was already our position. Peter, could you just explain to me, what is it that is supposed to happen on July the 4th? I don't understand.
That's the last day under the law, unless some legal maneuvering occurs, that Mr. Wright, who had owned the house and had the deed stolen from him, can rescind the sale. That is, if he can come up with the cash, which is about $1 million, to reverse the sale. The $1 million was paid direct to the bank to pay off his mortgage, to get into the details, so he doesn't have it.
He has the right to rescind the sale?
Yeah, because the sale met, according to the city bar attorneys, the sale met all the criteria of what would be called home equity theft.
Oh, a judge would have to make that decision, I assume. Okay,
well,
that does seem to be beyond our.
We can have a conversation about it, but basically that's the date by which we needed to have the pieces in place, and that's what's become a little difficult.
It's the date by which he has to come up with $1 million.
Well, that is the date by which the former owner can re-enter basically the ownership, position. And so whether he has $1 million or whether he's looking for, the city, state, and federal to somehow, come up with $1 million. But the point is, and once again, we're not party to it. I don't have all the details, but as I understand it, and this happens with foreclosures as well. There's typically a period of time within which, the owner can, quote unquote, re-enter and they or cure the situation. And so there is a deadline for that. But, there's been a lot of discussion. That's why I say all of the parties who are involved, who actually need to speak for themselves, and I have others discuss their position. You say, what is it they are committed to do, can legally do, and whether or not that is doable, within the time frame, because it's not exactly clear. And notwithstanding the former lieutenant governor's role, even there, if the state was doing something, there are probably timelines within which agencies have to make certain steps and take certain actions. And as we know, city and city agencies can take a while to do these things. So whether or not they were going to be able to do anything by, July 4th is a question.
Yeah, it's a big question. And let me just say that I think the community board's position on this issue is very clear, and that we would prefer not to see the building sold, and we would prefer not to see a 13-story tower built on that site. And I don't know why any elected official would need to get another resolution from the community board before taking any action on this matter.
Right, but Steve, since you really don't know what the elected official was asked to do, that's why we need to hear from them directly.
Okay, but
Absolutely.
All right, very good.
Which is why I came to you to say, what do we need to do to make this happen? So
right.
I will communicate this back to them and say, this is, if you want the CB12 resolution, contact Eliezer, sit down, figure out what you want it to say, and then it can move forward.
Exactly, and for that matter, and the elected officials have no problem, contacting, the committee directly. So if Robert Jackson or Al Taylor want or need to speak to the land use committee about, this project and understanding where the committee is, there's nothing preventing them from doing that. So I just need to, and I think the committee needs to better understand what's actually being discussed and what ask or series of asks are on the table.
Right. Well, I'll do it. I'll send you an email outlining where the situation is now, and then you'll understand it.
No, I think you did that.
Yeah.
What I think is important is for, as I keep saying, we understand and received, your update. We need to hear from Al and Robert, particularly if it's at the state level.
Yes.
For that matter, others, what's their take? What can they do? And in what time frame is it reasonable for those things to be done? And we need to hear it from them or their staff directly.
Yeah, I will make sure that happens. Thank you very, very much for indulging me here. It was a time warp 2 minutes, but I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay, thanks very much. So this is very enlightening conversations on the other stuff. And if we had more time, HHT might have been interested in the Dykeman, in the abolitionist house, but sadly.
HHT does not have the ability, once again, having dealt with them, they don't have the ability between now and July 4th to come up with $1 million to buy the house.
No, well, I spoke with John Sparchuk about it, but they like the concept.
That's my point. Even nonprofits. I mean, everything is going to take a certain amount of time, and there's a very short time frame on the table. But with that, my committee members, it is 10:36. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Are we all silent? I guess that means we're asleep.
I'll second it. I'll second.
We are adjourned at actually 10:38. Good night.
Great
all.
meeting, guys.
And welcome aboard, Daniel. And typically land use does not go until 10:36, but occasionally we do.
It's all good. It's part of the learning process, right?
Absolutely.